to do the clearing as long as the applicant's able to?
I would think so, if he's got somebody.
Well, he has to go ahead now and hire somebody to set the work up, so it's gonna
Okay.
take a good, I'm guessing 2 to 3 weeks minimum.
Okay. And this is
So,
primarily just clearing the access easement,
Correct.
so there's actually, it's available.
He fully expects it to be done within 30 days, but to be safe, we'd be looking for 60 days, just to make sure the work is complete.
Okay. So I know we've had a lot of extensions on this one, but we literally do have the map in hand ready to be signed. It's just a matter of making sure that the emergency access is cleared prior to the signing, so. Do I have a motion for a 60-day extension on this one?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Have a good night.
You too. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the Melly two-lot subdivision and lot line realignment on Route 82.
Good
How are
evening.
you?
How are you?
Good.
We're here for our first and hopefully only extension for Melly.
Okay.
Took a while to get the DOT permit. I don't know if you all know, started doing work out there with the DOT stuff. That's just about done. I think we got a couple signs to put up yet. We should get the sign off from them. And the DEC has been unbelievably slow in issuing the permit. All my conversations with Ashley and et al. Indicate that the permit should be issued any day, and I heard that 2 or 3 weeks ago. So they have a staffing issue. A lot of these people are on vacation a lot, and they're off. I don't know what's going on, but we should have the permit from the DEC probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay. Is there anything else holding it up right
No.
now? Just that?
That's it.
Okay. Michelle, have we had any conversation with the DEC since the original? Okay. All right. But you're hearing from them, it's just that it's not ready, or you're
Yeah, I
asking
mean,
for
they
more
got 5 or
information?
6 people looking at it.
Okay.
One person looks at it and makes some changes, gets back to Ashley, and then she gets it back, and that person's on a week of vacation next week, and it's just
Okay.
too many chefs.
So you're looking for a 6-month extension?
Yeah, just to be safe, I should hopefully have everything wrapped up before the extension actually, before it even expires. The original approval, but I just want to be safe.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions for Keith? Or do I have a motion for a 6-month extension on the Melly approval?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the Jackson Corners Phase 1 final approval for an extension.
Extension, yes, of Phase 1 final, Phase 2 preliminary. We're requesting a 12-month extension, hopefully, from the board. We crafted a letter back in July 30th of this year, kind of going through where we're at in the material removal process. Just looking at the letter here, we estimated about 58,000 cubic yards of material to be removed from the site. As of the July 30th letter, we show, let's say, 23,000 yards of material, plus or minus, removed. Since that time, we've probably removed another 5,000 to 8,000 yards, depending on various projects within the area, plus moving some material around on site. And the reason for the delay, obviously, we'd like to be a little further along than we are. But obviously, the economy is one aspect of it. But initially, when we started some of the on-site excavation, the DEC mining division gave us a ring and asked us, whether we were able to qualify for the waiver for taking material off the site. If you remember, we dealt with a lot of different aspects of the DEC during the process. We had the extension of the Shenandoah Water District. We had the stormwater aspect of the project because we were close to a wetland. And then we also had sediment erosion control aspect of the project. So basically we had to just tell DEC, we've been in front of your other divisions. This is not an overall mining permit. This is actually, the intent is to build houses. So we're taking the material out, we're gonna build houses eventually. We showed them the water main extension. So basically just took the information from one side of the DEC, showed it to the mining division. Long story short, that process took plus or minus 2 months. We kind of lost 2 months there in removing material, plus the weather aspect of it over this past winter it was a fairly cold winter. There wasn't too much building going on, so we lost a month or two there. So between the economy, between dealing with the DEC, and those delays, we haven't had the anticipated time to remove the material. We have about, I'd say, a 5 to 7 foot cut remaining to get to road grade. I just talked to John today. They've actually started bringing the back of the site to grade, and they're moving toward Townsend Road. So we'd like to do a 12-month extension, if possible, to allow us to anticipate for a slowing of the economy, especially during the winter months. Typically, there's not a lot of building going on. Everybody's anticipating this colder than average winter. So we'd like to push for the 12-month extension, because if we do just a 6-month, we're going to be back in front of you in February asking for another 6 months. And specifically, we have to get this to a final grade to get Dutchess County Health Department to endorse the septic systems. That's part of the Phase 2 aspect of it. So we'd like to have the springtime to get the Board of Health out there, so that way when we come back in 12 months, we have Dutchess County Health Department on board, we're at final grade, and there's no hangups.
Okay. Scott, are we doing any monitoring on site with this, or
Yes.
Are we comfortable with where we are with that if we did an extension like this, or is this?
I don't recall if there was an escrow or something established for the environmental.
I think we had an environmental aspect fund set up.
So we may need to revisit that if we're going to extend it another year.
I know we also extended the bond to cover the work that was done on site that was recently renewed in June of this year for another full year, so that the intent is to finish the job and ultimately establish homes on site.
Okay. So Scott, is there a reason to come back and have the planning board document what we're doing with the environmental monitor?
Well, maybe you can just defer it to me, and we'll handle that portion of it. And Pam.
Are you comfortable with that? I mean, there's a need for us to be monitoring as you're pulling material off the site, so.
Absolutely, as long as we can make that contingent upon Scott running through, making sure there's adequate funds as part of the approval tonight. I don't think the applicant can have a problem with that.
Okay. Michelle or Joe or Brendan, anything else we should be talking about with this one? Or I know it's a little bit unusual to do a 12-month extension, but I see the reason for it.
It was going back through correspondence, and I think we were, fine with the project. I had thought about, the extension of the time period and what that might mean for inspections and so forth, but otherwise, I think we're fine on the project.
Questions or comments from board members? Normally we would do a 6-month extension, something like this, but.
Not good with this one, so 12 months.
I would agree.
Okay with deferring to the building department to negotiate whatever is needed for as far as the environmental monitor, bonding or escrow or whatever we would do with that.
Yes.
Okay, so do I have a motion to extend the Jackson Corners Phase 1 final approval and Phase 2 preliminary approval for 12 months, subject to keeping all of your bonds current, because it looks like one of them will expire in June. Again, I'm assuming it was a 1-year extension of your, sorry, it was the bond that was just extended. Soil restoration. And then deferring to the building department for the continuation of the environmental monitor bond or escrow. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Sorry, that took me a long time to get out. Sorry about that. I was doing great till the
Sean
end there. I
wanted to
tried to
jump
slow
in.
down.
He wasn't fast enough.
No.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, the next item on our agenda is an adjourned public hearing for the John Jay Gas Station on Route 52.
Okay. John Jay Gas Station. There's been a lot of changes, I think positive for the John Jay Gas Station. The last time the public was here, to hear this application. We discussed the realignment of Lake Drive.
I'm sorry, yes. Thank you. Can I have a motion to reopen the adjourned public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Sorry about that, Brian.
Again, last time we were in front of the board, and the public was here, the option on the table was the realignment of Lake Drive, and shifting the site over 50 feet to allow Lake Drive to intersect our site and the Archway Plaza. At that time, the public discussed the blind turn issue that goes past our site right here, and how that would be negatively impacted by that realignment of Lake Drive. Following that meeting, Scott Bryant and I and Brendan from Hudson Valley Engineering went out the next day and walked the site and looked at the blind turn issue and some of the off-site improvements that would be required to improve that blind turn. And looking at what's involved, plus the realignment of Lake Drive, it seemed to be snowballing in a manner that it just didn't make sense. So what we've done is we've talked to the applicant, we discussed it with Scott Bryant and the town consultants about reverting back to the original plan that we had, which is keeping the site where it is, next to Archway Plaza, keeping Lake Drive in its current location, and then adding a traffic light. Of course,
So that's something new from last time? the
That's
addition
new
of
from
the
last
traffic
time.
light.
The traffic light was not an option that we presented to the board with the original lab to begin with. That traffic light obviously would be coordinated with the school light, obviously during peak hours. And the traffic light would be installed to mitigate the traffic concerns at the intersection of Lake Drive. We are committed to bringing water across Route 52. We show a generic location in this general vicinity here, but we will bring it to the rear property line. Applicant has always remained committed to that. Some additions that we do show, because we were talking about pedestrian safety, especially with the students at John Jay, and in coordination with the Archway Plaza. There's an existing sidewalk that comes from John Jay into this site here. What we propose is extending that sidewalk and then wrapping it into our site. That if there is student traffic that does cross the street, at least we can provide them a safe corridor, get them off the shoulder, and get them up on a sidewalk if they do want to enter the site.
So the sidewalk is gonna come up so that they're crossing the drive-through lane as opposed to crossing the fueling lanes to get...
Right. There's a natural break in the fence here that people actually use right now, and we show a crosswalk area getting
Okay.
into our site. What we show is this sidewalk coming up into here. Traffic will still enter the site through here. The drive-through lane is here, and there's obviously access to the pumps here and the front door in that area there. Again, this would be coordinated with DOT as part of a highway work permit.
And there's no changes to the John Jay site envisioned as a result of this?
There's no changes to the John Jay site. I think, and I'll let Brendan speak to the alignment of the traffic light, but I think we're going to try to position the traffic light that if John Jay ever decides to get on board, maybe we can align it such that if they ever have the ability to hook in, that the traffic light wouldn't be in a compromising position.
Yeah, what made me think of it is, and I didn't, when I was reviewing it, didn't jump out at me, but the kids walking across the entrance to Archway, which tends to be a little dicey.
Right. We could talk to DOT about putting something here as far as a warning signal or something like that, but just to try to get the students across in a safe manner. If they're riding the corridor or if they're from Archway coming on over, we provide two means of getting to our site.
What would actually make more sense is if they left the other gate open, and then kids could just cross at the light. What are the odds of getting the light, Brian?
I'll let Brendan speak to that, but there's a good case to be made that we're close to meeting the warrants for a traffic light, from what I understand. I think the congestion aspect that's currently there, plus at some point the West Complex coming online would enter into that equation to force the light.
Well, there's already a light at the West Complex,
Already.
so that would not force another light at Lake Drive.
There was,
Yeah.
and I'll let Scott maybe speak to this, that there could be, if the West Complex ever comes online, to my knowledge, there may be another entrance that would be associated with their site plan that would be in line with this.
They want two entrances?
There is two entrances.
They currently have two. There's one main entrance that goes to Rockville Drive that has a signal that's currently bagged. There's another Auditorium Drive, which is, it doesn't have, it's rights in, rights
Right.
out.
Yes,
There's no left turns there, but that is another access driveway to the West Campus.
but it doesn't really contribute to traffic there with the rights in, rights out.
Right, but
That's the way it
I
was
think what
set up.
Brian's alluding to, that at least the way they would position the signal, it wouldn't preclude the West Campus from realigning Auditorium Drive to actually connect into
Okay.
this intersection.
That's what the concern is.
Because that was one of the prohibitors. The John Jay trying to push their over was that that property belonged as part of the West Complex.
Now, when I was reviewing the traffic study, without the drive-through, we don't meet the criteria ever for needing a light. Is that correct? Without the Dunkin' Donuts drive-through?
No, I don't think that's correct. The criteria that it meets, there's many warrants, I think there's 9 warrants to establish a traffic signal. Sometimes you can meet one warrant, and sometimes you have to meet multiple warrants. The warrant that this one meets is actually peak hour traffic, where the peak hour traffic is high enough, and the associated delays with that would be such that that's one warrant that it meets. But usually that warrant needs to be added with another warrant. So that's why.
So even if the drive-through wasn't there for Dunkin' Donuts, you would still
Well,
meet the
it's,
warrant?
right, the development itself without the drive-through, it's still a convenience store. So it has, the traffic right now is sort of, teetering at that level of E to F. So if you eliminated the drive-through or eliminated a couple of the gas pumps, you would still, you would still approach that, an F, at least in the AM peak hour. Because right now, in its existing condition,
It's an F.
without the gas station operable or fully operable, it's not an F, but it's
close.
it's a DE, and it's close to an F. So
Yes.
anything you put into that, and so that you can understand that, it's mainly because there's a significant amount of traffic on 52. So, and right now, the amount of traffic that's on Lake Drive is right at that, that DE range. So any more traffic you add onto Lake Drive is gonna tip that scale to at least for the left turn coming out.
And I think we also heard very loudly from the public that even in its current state, it's not acceptable, so.
Right. And one thing, and I'm not gonna be perfect on the numbers, but there's probably, I would say somewhere in the magnitude of 100 houses back in Lake City, and probably 80% of them are, sort of in this northeast quadrant of Lake City that, I think human nature just brings you to the closest intersection of 52. So, some of them, the 20%, it's easier to go to Raffle Drive, but I would say the majority of traffic, and people from the public can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the majority of traffic would tend to take Lake Drive out of Lake City because it's, it's the closest intersection.
Brian, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to, some of the other comments that the public brought up was landscaping and lighting on the complex. I wanted to just mention that, speaking to Michelle at AKRF today regarding landscaping and lighting and that and so on, we've just, I think, identified a concept that works here with the addition of the traffic light. So the details behind lighting and landscaping have been initiated. We haven't submitted them just because the submission deadline was 3 weeks ago. But we've already met with, I met with Dennis Noyer this morning. We met out on Lake Drive, and we identified areas that we can screen along Lake Drive. If you look at the curbing that's out there, the inside face of the curb in our lot is the actual property line. And then the curb extends 2 to 3 feet out into the town right away. It's part of the old curbing that was associated with the old site. So it creates this island here. It's actually going to be town property. So we discussed is actually coming up with an agreement that we can maintain that island. We're also pushing the island further into our site, so we're going to have about a 4 to 5 foot island along this whole corridor here that we can plant with some kind of low growth vegetation that will shield the site of the complex. In addition to, we walked the site back in this area here. There's an existing topsoil pile here that's been kind of overgrown over the course of the years with some overhanging brush on our site and along the town right away here. We're going to have those removed, and we're going to push some of the evergreen screening in this area here to block any headlight glare from movement from the drive-through. And by removing this vegetation here, try to improve that blind turn issue that we have there. So you would be able to gain line of sight from basically this area up in here, as right now you're just gaining it right about here. So that was one of the things that we talked about today. That is going to be forthcoming. We circulated an email to Michelle today regarding that.
Are you showing the first residence there behind Archway? Because I know there was some.
The first residence is back in,
Okay.
is back into here, and then there's a residence over in this area here.
Okay, so are any of the residences, I know you're gonna put, I'm sorry, there's somebody in the audience speaking and our mics are picking up. If I can just ask everybody, we'll call you up for comments, but it's really hard to hear.
We can't hear him either, and he may turn a little.
Yeah, Brian, can you just pull the mic closer to you? Can you hear me okay? You can hear me? Okay. So Brian, any of the headlights from the path of the drive-through, are they gonna hit or sweep any of those residences?
What we're going to try to do is we're going to try to install, we haven't gone through the concept, we've only discussed it today on site with Dennis Miller, but do some heavy screening in here as far as pine trees, just because it's within our site, okay? And then along this corridor here, based upon maintaining sight line through this corridor here, planting vegetation that is appropriate to block headlight glare while not encumbering sight line coming down Lake Drive. We'll obviously submit that in our next
So
submission.
you'll have a version of your plan that shows your
Right, but-
landscaping and your lighting?
I wanted to tell the public that we obviously understand that there's a problem there. We're doing everything we can to mitigate the problem. Some of the other aspects that were brought up, I know we initiated some remediation on site as far as tank removal goes. There were some concerns about stockpiles being covered and not covered. I took a trip out to the site today again with Dennis Miller. Stockpiles have been removed from the site. I believe there's one pile of overburden that is located near the car wash that is not contaminated. It was actually on top of the tanks from what I understand. But questions regarding remediation, I know they've been brought up in front of the board. We do have the environmental consultants here tonight.
Okay, good.
They will be able to answer any of your questions, and maybe after the public also talks too, we can get them on board. I also have Dean Summer here. He's the applicant's environmental attorney, and we can give you some updates, hopefully on the water aspect of bringing water across the street and facilitating meetings with the DEC in that respect.
With the water itself, is your site going to be supplied by this pipeline as well?
Correct.
All right, so is it potable right now? Or are we able to draw from it right now?
Currently, we're not.
Okay,
It's in the works.
okay. All right, so you're aware of those discussions?
Right, I think Scott mentioned it in previous meetings that there was work being done by Mr. Andrews and the Dutchess County Health Department coming up with a plan to address some of the health department concerns. I know that was ongoing.
I thought that was water from the East Fishkill site. They didn't have a problem.
That water comes from Fishkill.
Fishkill, not East
Fishkill, okay, sorry.
That's the Shenandoah line.
Shenandoah line. I thought that was problem-free though.
Board of Health currently is, as we speak, but Board of Health wants to know before it's expanded any, that there's a plan in case the chloride levels go back up, what Plan B is gonna be, so that's what they're looking for.
So I remember bringing that up once, and Tom said the water was okay, Shenandoah.
Brian, where will the pipe cross the road? Do you know?
I show a generic location right now. Generally, in this location here, there's some heavy utility boxes associated with the IBM complex here. Since we've, I believe, locked in on the layout, we've gone ahead and we've ordered a strip survey of the entire corridor so we can show the traffic light location, we can show utility location. Again, in our next submission, I'm going to hopefully have a meeting with Scott and the engineering department to see where exactly is the best spot to jack it and receive it on our site, and then cut across and down Lake Drive. Ultimately, there'll probably be an easement on our site for the receiving pit, and ultimately we'll cross onto the town right away and bring water down to the edge of our property to facilitate expansion in the back.
Okay.
Thank you.
I know that was an issue at one point with this version of the plan, that we didn't have a way to come across right at Lake Drive, so you're comfortable you'll come across somewhere within that curbing and.
Right. We'll come across somewhere further down into the site.
We're gonna have some meetings with the utility companies.
That's fine.
It's very intricate right there, so it's,
As long as we're comfortable, there is a place where we're able
we'll find a
to-
spot, we'll find a spot.
Okay.
We'll have to find a spot.
Why don't we go ahead and let's do the update on the remediation and where we are right now, and then we'll get a quick update from our professionals, and we'll call up for public comment, if
Okay.
that's all right. So I know that was something that public was anxious to hear.
Good evening, Patrick Dunn with American Petroleum, Environmental Operations Manager. To date, what has been performed with the remediation aspect of the property is that the underground storage tanks in front of the, we'll call it the car wash area, have been removed. There was impacted soils found surrounding those underground storage tanks. In order to remove them, we stockpiled the soils, and those soils have been removed. The plan at this time, and approved by DEC, is that we need to further remediate the site with regards to removal of impacted soils, removal of groundwaters. There is an active groundwater pump and treat system on the site. It's dewatering the excavation and the groundwaters on the site. It's being treated by active absorption, carbon absorption, and being discharged to storm drain under the active stipulation agreement and discharge permit by DEC. That's all been prior corrective action plan and approved by DEC.
Okay.
In order to remove additional soils and excavate soils, that groundwater system needs to be in operation, which will be in operation throughout the construction period, and possibly longer, depending on soil analytical results and groundwater results after we're done with removing soils.
Okay.
There is soils that, impacted soils that have migrated underneath the car wash area. There is also impacted soils that needs to be addressed in the pipeline from the former tanks going to the current pump island area. So all that has to be removed and addressed and sampled and approved by DEC for removal.
Okay. And are you, forgive me, I'm not that familiar with the way the DEC goes about that. Does the DEC monitor what you're doing? Are you in compliance
Absolutely.
with their agreements?
DEC will be on site during it. We give them progress updates as to where we're at with everything prior to backfilling certain areas. We're not allowed to backfill until we do post-ex sampling and have their approval to backfill in certain areas. So they do, and at the end of the project, they get a full remediation tank closure report.
Okay.
Just from, before you do, just a couple of questions, just for my own education. I thought the main contaminant was MTBE.
It's a gasoline constituent.
Yes, I know what it is. It's
Yeah.
an additive that's water soluble. And you're removing that on site?
That is
and
correct.
discharging it into a storm drain?
No.
Okay, that's what I didn't understand.
No. There's gasoline compounds located on the property in the groundwater. We are pumping that out. We're going through our carbon absorption, which is stripping out that material.
Is the MTBE stripping out or something else?
MTBE, benzene, xylenes.
Okay, so there's more stuff in there.
Right.
That's what I didn't know, thank you.
And that's all being stripped out and captured in the carbon, and clean water is being discharged under the permit and being sampled.
Okay.
To prove that everything is.
Thank you, I tell you my education.
Could we get a range of dates, best case, worst case, for how long this cleanup will take?
The majority of the cleanup will take place during the construction period, because that's when we want to remove the source and everything. But long-term, you may be looking at 2 to 3 years, short-term, and then long-term, possibly 6 to 8 years down the road. Monitoring, yeah. Active groundwater and monitoring, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
To what depth was the soil, impacted by it?
Pretty much the soil was impacted right at almost that grade, right where the top of the tanks were, down to the invert of the tanks, but there's still,
Underneath?
within the water table, there's still impacts there. That's why we want to de-water in order to remove that. And the DEC would, the property owner is putting in place more an active remediation in order to clean the source. So DEC is okay with, with the tank removal, and source removal inside the excavation. And then long-term, it could go 10, 20 years down the road, but the way that the construction project's going, it's gonna enhance it and make it move quicker, so.
Okay. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Hi.
If you don't mind, just also give us your
I'm
name.
Dean Summer, I'm environmental counsel for Mr. Neshwa. Maybe if it would be helpful, just putting this in perspective. This property was one of 11 properties that had been contaminated by a prior party. And so what happens is you have both the on-site issue and then you have some off-site issues as well. So what had happened was, because the cleanups had been languishing, and in fact hadn't really commenced, and these sites were sitting there, we had reached agreement with the department. So everything being done is being done with department oversight. We have a...
When you say department, you mean DEC?
Department of Environmental Conservation. So this was part of a multi-property agreement where all these sites that had not been cleaned up would get cleaned up. I have to say, you can do this quickly, and when Pat's talking about the longer period of time, that's monitoring, because what you're trying to do is ultimately get the groundwater to drinking water standards. And, in order, you're dealing in part per billion in the case of benzene, which is a gasoline constituent. You're dealing with 0.07 parts per billion, or 0.7 parts per billion of benzene, so it's less than a part per billion. And so in order to get there, you do, in this case, soil removal. There's a pump and treat system going on, but it does take a while to get water so clean that you're removing, down below part per billion. So I always use the image that if you fill up this room with 1 billion ping pong balls, white ping pong balls, and you color one of them orange, and you mix it in, that's a violation of groundwater standards for benzene. So that's why sometimes the monitoring goes on. Normally, and Pat, I'll defer to you, but normally, once you get the concentrations down so that they know they'll naturally attenuate, the department will reduce the amount of monitoring that you have to do. Here, part of the discussion was, in conjunction with the town, was to bring a water line here so it would be available to address off-site issues, because those off-site issues being handled by another party. What we have done is we've reached out to the controller's office, excuse me, because there is a spill fund. So there may be a meeting with the controller's office to see if there would be any resources available for the town as well. In the meantime, DEC continues with an enforcement proceeding against that other party. So the offsite issue is also going to have to be addressed.
I mean, the remediation of the property will not cure the off-site problem.
Well, to the extent that the on-site problem at one time was the source.
Yes. It'll stop putting more
it.
output.
So if you think of it as a wall, if you will, and that's what the pump and treat system to which Pat had referred is doing. It stops the molecules from crossing into off-site, but you still have, if you will, fugitive molecules that are in the off-site area, and a lot of them. And that would be the benefit.
So the only real solution for the properties in back, though, is new clean water.
But I want to just make
In
sure.
a
we
short,
understand-
if you're
I'm sorry.
talking a reasonable time for the folks
10
who
years.
live there, I think that they would want a water line.
But I want to make sure we're very clear, it's not this applicant's responsibility
agreed.
to address that.
Absolutely.
It's this
No.
what this applicant is doing is making sure that the water pipeline exists.
And it
so that
comes
at the point
across
where
the
there are
road.
funds
And the
to do
source
that,
is,
it can
and the
happen.
source is removed and stopped. I mean, and that was the problem, is you had this contamination that was there that was just migrating off-site. We've now stopped it, and then I have to remove it, but it's still off-site.
Because I understand Bettini still has a fund set up where they maintain the scrubbers in the houses so that the water's clean right now.
Yeah, John, I don't know, I know Tom had a meeting that he was setting up with some folks up in Albany.
Sorry to
I don't know if
muse
we have an
names.
update on
As a
that.
matter of
No,
fact,
it-
we spoke today, and he has a meeting with the former property owner, Botini, coming up in the very near future.
Right.
Tom is in touch with their attorney, and it's discussed about the contributions that they may or may not make.
Okay.
The department, if need be, I mean, there is a spill fund, so I don't think that, I know there are off-site point of entry treatment systems. So the department would maintain those if need be, but I think the prior owner is responsible.
Yes.
They, at this point, they would be subject to significant penalties if they didn't continue to maintain those systems. But I wanted to know if anyone had any questions about how this came across. There is an agreement, the department, we're in touch with the department, we coordinate with the department has oversight of it.
There was some concern raised by the public, and I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but I'll just, in general, there was some stockpiling of soil, and we were seeing runoff into drains and things like that, so there was some concern. I know the applicant put some barriers up to make sure that stopped, and I think what we just wanted to hear was that any of those soils that might have been migrating into the local waterways or anything really was clean soil versus soil that you're still in the process of.
Yeah, the impacted
remediating,
soils
so.
have been removed. If there's clean soil that's being stockpiled.
And also during construction, now that the soil has been classified and everything, and has already been approved for disposal, it's gonna be removed from the site and then loaded right on the trucks and removed.
Is that soil that's on the surface sitting in piles now, or the soil that's underground, right?
So there's no soil on ground right now, but the soil that's going to be removed, that's in the ground,
Okay.
going to be removed, it's gonna be live loaded on the
Live
trucks, very temporarily staged at all, it's already been classified, it can go right over.
So the soil that was in piles that was washing was clean soil?
Was clean soil.
Yeah, there was clean soil on that site, yes.
No,
Stockpile.
that was the clean soil, because there were
Yes,
complaints
that
about,
is-
that was the clean soil.
Yes.
Thank you.
The soil, we bought it to fill up the hole, and we got stopped by DEC not to put it back into the hole. So we took it out of the gas station back.
There was a question last time, was the soil that was washing clean soil or not? It was clean. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian, if you don't mind, come on back up for just a minute, and then we'll open for public comment. Just, have you done, now that we have settled on a design here, you had not just the lighting and the landscaping, are we working on stormwater, or is there additional things that we should be talking about? And then Brendan, I also just want to make sure we touch on site circulation and the traffic.
The site is a majority impervious, so I'll be working with Joe's office. As far as stormwater goes, I think we're gonna have a reduction in impervious with the greening of the site where we can, while still maintaining the required parking for the site. Again, I will be running over those details with Joe, as we typically did with the Hopewell stations. This application, stormwater-wise, is gonna mirror the Hopewell station that we did. Again, we'll be providing him details and whatnot. I know there was a site circulation issue as far as lane offsets on site. I think specifically in this area here, I think we're only showing 22 feet to the next, to the pump station. If you look at the turning radiuses that Hudson Valley provided, the truck swing to get in here, which is at the time, we didn't know how far in this was gonna swing in when the trucks do turn in. We do have the ability to adjust this over slightly to maintain, the required travel lanes that code does require.
And the far side is still where your exit lane will be for the drive-through, and that's also your loading zone?
Right. We do have, this is the area to come in for the drive-through, for cars to place orders. This here is the escape lane, which will also be used as a temporary unloading zone. Deliveries will be in the back here. Trucks will make the swing out this way.
And fuel delivery would be from
Fuel delivery.
Slightly closer to the road?
Right. Fuel
Okay.
delivery is going to be right here. The trucks would come in. They would stage in this area here. We do provide some notation up here to provide this area to be coned off during deliveries. Mitch does control the delivery aspect of the site, and typically he likes to unload during off-peak times to obviously facilitate consumers coming into the building. But we all know there are peaks in the gas delivery season, but
Right.
we have made provisions to try to limit to off-peak hours.
Okay, and I think we were probably okay with off-peak hours. We wanted to make sure they weren't middle of the night hours, because we do have residents in the back that would hear the trucks and things like that.
Correct. And
so.
I do believe we made notation on there, but we'll make sure that that's on the next submission. We'll verify that.
Okay. And then, Brendan, have we had a chance with this site to actually do the site circulation and the parking spots and all of that? I don't know how far we got with this plan before we started looking at the alternatives.
Yeah, this was the site that we did fully develop in terms of making sure there was adequate access for the tractor-trailer delivery, and then for just general site circulation. I would think the only comment if we would have is if there's any way to actually squeeze any more room in the front curb line, Brian, to the front pumps. I think that's,
In this general area in here.
yeah, right.
I think we'll have that ability. We can probably squeeze the building a little bit, push it back a little bit, maybe expand the sides a little bit. I think we have some room to play there, so we can provide.
And it's just looking about, cars that would come in off of 52 and then try to position themselves to get aligned with those pumps. I think for a regular passenger car would be fine, but maybe something a little bit bigger or something with a trailer. So I think even a couple of feet would really help in that area.
And you are changing the angle of those things, right? So, I mean, today they're parallel to this road.
Right, now we'll be facing the building.
That'd be
Perpendicular.
perfect.
So, yeah, and the Dunkin' Donut trucks are all gonna be the small ones, right? So really, the only large vehicles coming on site are gonna be the gas trucks.
It's your tanker truck, correct?
Well, I think a Dunkin' Donuts truck is, it can be a WB-40.
Yeah, we've seen larger Dunkin'
Yeah.
Donuts trucks, so I don't wanna make that.
Or
assumption.
larger, right. So, I mean, I think, again, that the site will accommodate a WB-62 in terms of being able to get in and park along the escape route there and be able to turn it and get out onto Lake Drive. But those are the two trucks. I mean, there are larger delivery trucks.
And what about fire apparatus circulation?
Yeah, I don't think we did a specific circulation pattern for that, but, in light of the fact that it accommodates a WB-62, I don't see an issue with accommodating that, but we can get Brian to update a plan to show it.
Is there anything special that we need to do with the gas station as far as fire support, or is there anything that they? I'm sorry, and I should be looking, we probably have fire advisory board comments. Was there anything that?
Yeah,
I don't
I'm
remember
sure there's building code
There's
issues,
nothing
but,
else.
Yeah, building code issues. I think the biggest thing probably with the fire truck swing is to make sure that any screening we provide over in this area here, there's access for the top of the truck to swing through. I think that would be the only restriction.
Hi, I'm the president of American Petroleum. The gas station itself, the canopy, will have a fire suppression system in it
Okay.
that meets NFPA 30 code.
Of the halon stuff?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Brendan, anything else with site circulation?
no, I think we did pretty much vet that all out with this, since this was the original plan that we had worked on.
All right. Joe, I'm sorry, I didn't come back to you after we talked about stormwater to get your comments. I apologize.
Yeah, as Brian mentioned, the site is fully developed, and there really, if anything, it seems like there'll be a slight decrease in the impervious coverage. I think it'll be more of a erosion control and/or phasing, looking into some of those details. This site will have a little bit advantage over Hopewell because they're not trying to keep any of it open while they're doing their demo. So it should be easier, but we would still need to see some details about where they place fencing, how they're gonna control the remediation part versus the regular construction and some of those items. We did have some access and circulation comments. I think we talked about some of those as far as truck turns and aisle widths and, you know, what size vehicle is gonna use this, delivery loading zone, and, I guess there's something in the front of the building where the handicap spaces were. We thought maybe sliding them to the right just seemed to be where they are now. It's like smack in front of the door, and might cause some issues with the wheelchair getting in through the doors. Yeah, we had a little, some notes about the water. Yeah, this is from the September 6th letter, which, since this layout was similar to the January submittal, some of this may be a little bit repetitive from that earlier letter, but we just, since it's been a while, we decided
Yeah,
to come back to them.
I mean, I think all these minor detail things, just shifting the parking space away from a door, I think is a relatively easy fix.
Yeah.
That can be corrected in a future submission.
Yeah, we touched a little bit on the water, you know, the details of the water main, but then we talked about that already. And other, you know, other agencies that are involved with the review, DOT obviously, and some little things on the drainage system. But, you know, overall, they're fairly minor comments.
Michelle, I know landscaping and lighting, we've said that's to come, and we haven't done that part yet, but anything else from AKRF we should be going over right now?
No, those were the last remaining, when it was last at this layout, those were the last remaining issues.
Okay. Scott, anything from your end that we should go over? Okay. And John, anything else we need to?
I think it's been covered.
Okay. Then why don't we go ahead and we'll open up right now for public comment. So if there's anyone here to speak for or against the John Jay gas station on Route 52, what I would have you do is come on up. We have a sign-in sheet here on front of our table. You can come on up and sign in, and we'll call you up in the order you sign in. And ma'am, you can go ahead and join us at the podium if you'd like now. We know you'll be first.
I was just wondering, if we're coming down Lake Drive towards Route 52, do we have to turn in that first entrance or exit? Or is that only an exit to get to the gas station?
Oh, that's a
From
good
Lake
question.
Drive.
So there's gonna be, and Brian, maybe you can use the pointer, there's gonna be two entrances onto Lake Drive, I think one towards the rear of the property and one towards the front
One
of the
by
property.
the gas station? Oh,
Yep.
okay, that's what I needed. Thank
Yep.
you.
Okay. Thank you. Who's the next person on our list?
Good evening. A couple of questions. The egress that they spoke about, they're putting a fence line in there. Will there still be a space for people, the kids to walk up to the school? Like a
Yes,
sidewalk?
between the Archway Plaza and.
No, I'm talking about on Lake Drive. Currently, there's like a small walkway they can walk and be off the road. But Brian indicated there's a fence that could be going up to the curb in there.
Along Lake Drive here?
Correct, all the way up though.
All the way up?
No, the other way.
Is there a
Keep
sidewalk
coming
there
up
today?
to 52. Yeah, paving
The
area.
pumps are supposed to be
paving.
moved.
No fence line, just
Okay.
landscaping, no growth.
I
The
think the
other-
fence was, you said there was a fence between this site and Archway,
There's a fence
but there's a
here.
break in the
There's a
fence?
break in the fence right
No, talking
Right,
about
but
coming
he's
up
talking
Lake
about the
Drive,
other
from the
side.
students walking up Lake Drive to go to the high school.
Okay, so these are kids who live in Lake
Who
Drive?
live in Lake Drive, in the back,
Okay.
and then walk to school.
And now, but there's no sidewalk there today?
There's
correct?
currently just the road, but it's off to the side, so there is a space that they can get off the road.
Okay,
That
so,
remains.
say it again?
That remains.
That remains? Okay.
The curb line remains.
The egress coming out onto Lake Drive, currently you're gonna put a stoplight at 52 in Lake Drive,
That's the current proposal, yes, that's new from the last time we saw this.
and then the stoplight will stop the cars coming out of Lake Drive, correct?
My assumption is it'll be a three-way stop, Lake and the 252
Okay,
east and
when
westbound.
the cars are stopped on Lake Drive and the traffic is flowing out of the gas pumps, out of the convenience store, out of Dunkin' Donuts, and they pull across, and they're stopped, and they're across the road on Lake Drive. So when you make a right-hand turn coming into Lake Drive, that you can't proceed down Lake Drive. Currently, that happens now. When the gas station's not even working, people come straight across because they want to get and make a left turn. I don't see how that's remediated. That's still going to be a problem there because you're going to have three flows: the gas pumps, the Dunkin' Donuts, the convenience store is still going to feed onto Lake Drive. The traffic light is going to stop the traffic, and they're going to come straight across, and we're still going to have that problem. I still don't see where that problem's been fixed.
Okay, so Brendan and Brian, can I ask the two of you to take a look at that? And
Yeah.
we'll discuss that at our next meeting. I don't know if that's something we
That's
can
something
do
we
via
brought up,
signage
but
or.
not at the last meeting, but the meeting before, and
Right.
it's still
Well, and
current.
I apologize, we weren't with this plan at our last meeting, so now we're kind of back to this version of the plan, so we'll have to address all of those issues.
Just, we do have the ability to do, and there has been some, what they call queue analysis done to estimate how many cars would be in a queue during a cycle of the signal. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but we have done some of that analysis, so we can,
I understand the
Brendan,
queue, but what I'm worried about is the people coming across to try to get into the queue that blocks Lake Drive.
Right.
They
Yeah, so
constantly,
Brendan,
Isn't that illegal? I mean, isn't that an illegal?
oh, yes, it
maneuver?
is.
yeah, it happens all the
But they
time.
still do it.
So,
They do it all the time. I mean, you could sit out there when I come
So
home,
that
and
could be
you
like a
sit
police
there, and you almost get
enforcement
killed because the car comes behind you on Lake Drive.
let's do a couple of things.
52.
Okay, let's do a couple of things. If you and Brendan can look at the site circulation, there may be a way to direct some traffic towards the rear exit, so that if they're making the left-hand turn out, I'm not saying all the traffic would need to go out that way, but maybe that's one way to help alleviate it. We could make sure that there's a way, they can use that exit lane or something to do that. The other thing we could do, and Brendan, I'm not sure if there's a typical sign for this, but we could say no left turn if it's blocking the drive or something like that. We could do something in terms of signage.
let me make sure I understand your question, just so, I mean, you're saying the cars coming out get caught and can't get onto Lake Drive.
So I'm
There's a line
leaving
of
the gas
traffic on-
station,
they can't get
leaving
into
the gas station,
the other
trying to
lane.
make a left on Lake Drive, to
Right.
make a right or a left at the light onto
Okay.
52. And I'm
Walmart,
blocking-
Fishkill.
So they're
a line-
blocking Lake Drive.
But what it is, there's a line of cars on Lake Drive.
Gotcha, right, okay.
And then they come out to try to get into the queue,
I got you,
and then
okay.
they're blocking our traffic going on.
Okay.
It happens.
Right.
Okay,
And it is.
I mean, one of the things is that the traffic signal is gonna help to move traffic a little bit more efficiently. And when I say a queue analysis, that depends on how many cars are actually stacking up during a cycle. And if you can reduce the number of cars that are stacking in that cycle, that'll be a less frequent problem.
Brendan, have you ever been to Walmart in Fishkill when you try and pull out of the parking lot to get into the
well,
lane
this
to make
isn't
a?
Walmart, but let's.
But that's what happens, they just pull right across and block everything,
Yeah,
blocks
no,
up.
I understand.
Yes, that's the
Well, is there a
situation.
way that maybe the egress could not come off of Lake Drive, come off the front onto 52? Have them come in and out 52, leave Lake Drive alone?
We can definitely look at that. I think
That way we
that
don't have to worry
with
about
the
it at all.
traffic signal, a lot of the issues with the traffic were going to be alleviated, but let's,
Yeah, I don't,
See
just in
what
terms of the left turn traffic coming out of the site, I mean, that's sort of the purpose for the signal, is to make that movement more efficient and be able to handle that traffic. You know, increasing the capability of that intersection and the capacity of the intersection for the left turns coming out.
It's not the capacity, it's when the cars are stopped.
Brendan, can you just express that you understand what,
Yep.
what the
No, I
gentleman is
do understand what
referring to?
you're saying. It's just that in its unsignalized condition, where the level of service isn't that good, and we're talking about average delays, it might take a car a long time to be able to make that left turn maneuver. Thus, lots of traffic will stack up on Lake Drive trying to get out. The traffic signal is gonna help to alleviate that because it's gonna allow more efficient movement of those left turn vehicles coming out. So the amount of cars that are gonna stack up on Lake Drive are gonna be less. And can I tell you exactly what they are? Right now, I can't, but I can tell you that we can do an analysis of that, which is a queue analysis, and we can estimate, based on the traffic flows that are out there and what's being proposed at the gas station, how many cars we would anticipate queuing. And if the queue is 2 or 3 cars during a typical cycle, the problem would be much less frequent. Now, you can't predict everything. There might be 5 or 6 cars at one point in time, but it might be less of a problem with the signal than it is in its current situation with no traffic signal.
Has there any count that has been done what they anticipate, the amount of cars that'll be queued up for the drive-through for
Yes,
Dunkin' Donuts?
Yes, we've done a
Is
pretty
that,
extensive.
will that be
traffic study.
considered also in
Yeah.
the
Yes.
queue?
Absolutely.
And the 8 gas pumps and the convenience store,
Yep.
all this is being?
Yes. All that traffic has been estimated using, standard practices for estimating trip generation for these types of facilities.
The problem with the remediation of the water, how does that affect the homes that are behind the gas station? You mentioned the fund that is out there. How does that work?
John, that's something, I know Tom was gonna speak to it, and he wasn't able to be here tonight. He had a conflict. Is that something that you can cover, or can we have Tom do that at our next meeting?
The spill fund.
It's just not something I'm familiar
I don't
with to
believe
be
we've
able to
had
share.
that
it
meeting
with
yet
you.
with the comptroller's office to even really speak to how that works.
Right.
Do you want me to tell you what it is? You want to know what the spill fund is?
I think it's more in relation to these particular residents. I'm not.
So the
that's
residents
something that-
right now have reverse osmosis. They'll bring the water to the back of the property. Question is, the rest of the infrastructure that has to distribute the water to 100 some odd houses back there, whatever, who pays for it? Where's the money come from? When's it happen?
The spill fund is.
I'm sorry, let's have you come up to the mic
I'm
so we
sorry.
can hear, because, sir, if you don't mind, we'll just let him speak, and then we'll.
Well, if this answers your question, spill fund is generated by barrels of oil, so the terminals largely have to contribute a certain percentage of revenue into the spill fund. The controller's office controls the spill fund. It's under the state navigation law. And victims of spills and/or the DEC, when you don't have a potentially responsible party to clean up a spill, can resort to this fund. So what some municipalities have been able to do, if there's generally not a potentially responsible party, and here the former owner is the responsible party, but municipalities, if they're not getting relief, if in this type of situation where you have an off-site condition, it's staying there, it's not getting cleaned up, municipalities can't go to the controller's office, to the spill fund administrator, and say, look, would you be willing to contribute some funds out of the spill fund to extend the water line into this area, and then you would end up having to form a water district, or it would extend the water district. I defer to the town.
We're not sure how that's gonna work.
Yeah, I
out,
don't
but
think
either
we
be
know
an
that yet.
extension or a formation of a new district.
But it's basically, everybody has heard of, for example, the super fund for hazardous waste cleanups. That's what this spill fund is, but it's for petroleum cleanups.
And we really haven't moved forward on that yet, because there's a meeting coming up with.
Right, and it's not a definite
So
thing
it's-
that they would do it.
It's
but-
in its early stages.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why the site itself is getting cleaned up was, Mitch is not responsible for this, so he volunteered to take on these sites and to clean them up on site. The former owner is subject to an enforcement proceeding by the department, but if it's kind of going on for a long time, so I think the town is
Right.
looking for some other relief.
Who administrates that fund?
The controller.
The controller.
Who overlooks it? Does the town oversee that and make sure that it's done?
It's the New York State Controller. It's not a town
But
person.
who petitions for it? Do the homeowners petition for it, or is that something that the town petitions?
I believe that's something that our town attorney is working on
Yes.
with the state.
So that would be done by the town?
The town
Yes.
will be pursuing it, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's the next person on our list?
I'm Alan Kolodner, 11 Circle Drive. First, let me thank the applicant for listening to us. Appreciate it. A couple of questions came up just from tonight, but I think we're all pleased that they've gone back to at least some variation of the first plan and gotten rid of moving the road, et cetera. I've heard tonight regarding putting a traffic light there, but I also heard we think so. And it's not a definite, that if this project goes through, there is a chance that there could not be a light there, correct?
Right.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's clear so we all understand that.
Right, but let me, if I can just expand on that a little bit.
Sure.
Normally, what we would do is, if we approve this and we approve it meeting the traffic light because it's a traffic mitigation, we would have the applicant set aside funds to be able to pay for that. And then there's a process with the New York State DOT where they go through making sure that the light is warranted. And sometimes the DOT does that right away, and sometimes there's a period of time after a site is in place before that happens. So we would make sure that the funds are available to install that
So
light
they'd be
at the time.
escrowed or held aside? is that-
Exactly, at the
okay.
time where it becomes, so I don't wanna leave an impression that it's maybe we'll get it, maybe we won't. If it's needed, the New York State controls, obviously, Route 52, so they would determine the need, but we would make sure the funds were available, because
Okay.
we feel that that's probably going to be a need with this plan.
Thank you. The applicant and his representatives mentioned before about the piles of dirt that had been removed from the site.
Right,
That it was clean.
right.
If it was clean, why was it removed? That's my question. Up until 3 weeks ago, when they removed the soil, which, by the way, looks great, we're glad they did. But up until 3 weeks ago, the water was running off of those piles into the storm drain, even with their corrective actions, and I've taken plenty of pictures. I'll be happy to share them with the board.
Okay.
So if that soil was clean, there was no reason to remove it from the site. The applicant initially, some months ago, had mentioned that they would restrict access to the drive-through and shut it down at a reasonable hour of the evening. I'd like to know if that's still part of this plan. Nothing's been said regarding the number of pumps. Right now, there are 4 pumps with 8 filling stations. I would expect that is either going to stay the same or expand out, so that needs to be communicated to the public.
Yeah, the existing site has 3 pumps, but only 4 filling positions, because 2 of the pumps sit close to each other. One, I think, is diesel, and 2 are gasoline.
You can
So-
get 6 people pumping in there, so if you back in and you move around. I've lived there for 30 years, so you can.
Okay, we'll call it 4 or 6.
Okay.
I
Is
guess
it going
the way
to
I drive,
8?
it would only be 4, but okay.
Is it going to 8?
It is going to, the current proposal has 4 pumps and 8 filling positions. And Brian, if you can just use your pointer, the 4 pumps are perpendicular to Route 52.
Correct.
And then you'd have 2 cars on either side of each.
So it's an expansion of the current site?
It is an
Okay.
expansion.
Somebody had mentioned, I think it was the traffic engineer, that a WD-62, I'm not sure what that is, but I was at the Route 9 Dunkin' Donuts site across from Myron Lumber or in front of Allsport, whichever direction you're looking, this morning. And there was a full-size tractor trailer sitting out on Old State, which is the old road leading into the park, blocking traffic, had half his load out on the street. You couldn't get from Sarah Park out onto the road without crossing a double yellow line. There were Verizon trucks. You couldn't get out of the site because it's a one-way exit. And I've spoken to people who live in the condo complexes back there. Those trucks, at times, have blocked the exit and the entrance into the condo complex. So when you come out, there's a tractor trailer blocking your way, and you have to go all the way back around to the site.
Okay.
So I'm not sure what a
The
WD-62 is.
WB62 is a full-size tractor trailer.
Okay, so now we're gonna
Okay.
have full-size tractor trailers trying to cut that corner. And if the light is red, you have no way to get in there. So fire truck, ambulance, emergency, anything, there's gonna be a tractor trailer, full-size tractor trailer trying to make that left. We don't have that today. So that's a change to the site plan that we currently have.
Tell me which left you mean, because I'm not following.
You're gonna have a tractor trailer entering where the pumps are, the tank is, going alongside the building and exiting the back of the property onto Lake Drive.
Okay.
So you have a full-size tractor trailer coming out onto Lake Drive now, which we don't have that today.
Okay.
So somebody on the board had mentioned we're gonna have smaller trucks for delivery. That's not the case. And you have traffic problems with the full-size trucks today. I'd be happy to share pictures with the board about how this delivery mechanism at 9 o'clock in the morning was blocking traffic.
Okay.
So,
Just to clarify, I want to make sure, the position of the truck when they're making the delivery will not be blocking any roads. It'll be blocking a portion of one of the driveways into the site, but only one of the driveways.
I understand that.
So from a delivery standpoint, I don't think you would see delays because a tractor trailer is dropping
Well, when
things
he
off.
exits and that light's red, and somebody is coming out of the front of the station into the queue, and now we're backed up to the V, and you have a tractor trailer trying to come out, you also have the people in the medical arts building trying,
I
you
think
understand my
this-
point.
I totally understand your point. I think this also speaks to what Brian was referring to earlier, which was that they're trying to stagger their deliveries to be off-peak hours. So that it would be at times where we don't anticipate queuing at that.
9 AM on Route 9 is not off-peak, and I believe.
I'm not gonna
But-
speak for Route 9,
Okay,
but
but
I'm
it's
gonna
the
say
same
that,
situation.
I'm gonna say that for our application.
Okay, I
we're-
understand, I'll move on.
No, I wanna make sure we talk about this, because we stipulate on our plans hours of operation, and when we need to, and it sounds like we will, when we need to specify hours of delivery, we can do that as well. So,
Great.
that's something that I
That's
don't
fair.
want to leave
That's
an
fair.
impression that we're going to have things, at rush hour happening at this
Okay,
site.
I understand.
I also don't want to leave the impression that I stated that, I asked about the site.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah, could I-
But somebody had mentioned it, and I thought that was kind of odd. It's a full-size tractor trailer.
It's just interesting, maybe this wasn't done in the past, but I know Stewart's en route, coming out of Hillside Lake Road, full-size tractor trailers back in there and block traffic into the Stewart site now, right now.
Well, I think they're saying they're gonna come in off.
Okay, yeah, they actually back in, because they can't go around the site.
In this site, that's not gonna be necessary,
I'm-
because we're,
Just asking the question, because, you said we make plans to make sure that doesn't happen. But obviously, when Stewart's was built in East Fishkill on 376, it wasn't done. That's all.
Another question regarding the rumor sometimes becomes truth. What will be done to restrict this site from accepting traffic from the back of Archway Plaza, past the back of the building, out onto Lake Drive?
what will be done to.
So you have that
restrict-
parking area there. What will restrict all of that traffic from Archway coming across this site and exiting onto Lake Drive? Can it be I don't know if it's a deed.
Right,
I was gonna say,
Archway Plaza
there's
doesn't
no-
have the ability to do that
do
right
that.
now.
And that is not part of this
That is
application?
not part of this
Because
application.
it
I
is
cannot
being-
promise you that Archway wouldn't come and make application to do that, but it's not part of this
Okay,
application
thank you.
They'd have to get a cross easement, of course.
with
No,
with this
Archway,
application, right?
They'd have to grant it.
If the two property owners agree, then it's just time.
But oftentimes we want.
As we
properties
speak,
to agree.
Archway has no interest in a connection,
Thank you.
absolutely no interest as we speak.
And then just something that I don't know how important it is or not, but the notice that was on our streets with today's date had a 7:30 start date, and this meeting started at 7 o'clock. I think that needs to be addressed.
Thank you. This was actually our first meeting that we started at 7, so we'll make sure the applicant corrects that. We used to have a 7:30 start time.
I understand, but that may be the reason why some people didn't show up.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
The gentleman.
Can we-
I want to address.
I want to come back to a couple of the questions raised, Brian, that's fine.
I want to address the soil on site. It keeps coming up, and we keep addressing it. The soil that was on site, that wasn't covered, there was runoff hitting the soil and running off. That was clean soil brought to the site to fill the hole in anticipation of further remediation. Upon the public outcry, the soil was seeded and mulched, and then the applicant decided it was enough of a fuss and kept coming up that he decided to remove all material on site.
And to be clear, originally you thought you were putting that soil to fill the hole and the DEC said no, or the DEC said not yet?
The last time we were here, Mr. Nuss
I'm sorry, ma'am, I'm
brought
gonna,
up and
we
the-
can't
he
have
said
folks
that
yelling out. We can't.
The soil
Please-
was contaminated.
Please come up and sign in. We can't
I
have
will.
folks yelling
I'm
out.
waiting for the other people.
Brian, the soil that was stockpiled on the site came from another site or came from this site?
It came from, I'll have the environmental guys talk
Okay.
about it, but it came
That's
from,
fine.
we brought material in, a lot of it was run-of-bank material, it was topsoil.
Okay,
We
so
brought
fill
that's
in.
okay. Can we
Fill
have,
the
is it
hole, and we
Mr.
got
Dunn?
stopped by DEC.
Mr. Dunn, can you just,
Aren't they
Yes.
jumping ahead? Wasn't it the public comment for the the neighborhood first before the gentleman would
What,
have their
sir, what we're
comment?
doing right now is we've had a neighbor that has provided comment. We're addressing some of the questions that were raised as he's asking them. I don't like to leave things hanging, so we will come back, believe me, we'll get to everybody on the list. Mr. Dunn, if you don't mind, just explain where the soil came from, and then why it was, what was the intent for the soil and why it was removed, so that it's, just so that we all understand, if you don't mind.
The soil was gonna be utilized as
And come on up,
backfill.
if you would, come on up to the podium and the microphone.
The soil, the clean soil that was brought to the site was brought to the site in order to to fill the voids of where the tanks were removed.
And it came from another site?
Came from another site, clean site, for a run-a-bank item fill for this application. The reason why it was removed was because of the nuisance.
It came out of that hole.
Well, yes, there was also a soil pile that came out of the hole.
It was contaminated.
But that was
We
covered
watched
with-
them put
Okay,
the soil
ma'am.
there.
That is,
Ma'am.
that is correct.
Ma'am.
There was two separate piles. There was a clean soil
It
pile.
wasn't one pile, sir. I live in Lake City
Okay.
back there. It's one pile, it was contaminated, and he
Ma'am.
admitted to it at the last meeting.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, I like
I'm
to run a
sorry
very
also, Ms.
calm
King.
meeting.
I'm sorry also. But
We
they're covering up
we
laws.
can't have folks yelling from the audience. I want you to come up and sign in. I don't want you to not have your say, but I need you to have it in an orderly way.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, were you there when the piles were originally made?
Yes.
Okay, so you're saying there were two distinct piles?
My company was there with regards to the environmental, I was actually the one who witnessed the tanks removal.
Sir, ma'am, I'm gonna ask you to please stop this conversation. And sir, I'd like you to direct your comments to
Sure.
us as the board.
Okay.
We'll document what you're saying, and members of the public can feel free to come up and have additional comment,
Sure.
that's fine. But I wanna make sure that we keep the meeting running nicely and orderly.
Right, I just want to get it on the record, there was two distinct piles of soil, one contaminated, one not,
That's correct.
and only the non-contaminated one was washing into the storm drain.
That's correct. The other pile was covered, it was placed on plastic and covered with poly sheeting.
Okay, so there was no runoff from, okay, just wanted to get that on the
How
record.
long was-
And the New York State Conservation Department was on site witnessing the tank removal and the soil.
Okay,
Stop
that's
by.
on the record,
So
thank
the
you.
contaminated soil, how long was that on the site?
The contaminated soil, I believe, it was removed in August, I'm not sure when it was actually generated. It was during the tank removal process, which was when we started construction, I'm not sure. We did the environmental oversight, there was another contractor that was doing the actual
Can you
tank
give me a
removal.
rough, was it a year ago, was it 3 weeks ago, was it?
I can't remember, it was 6 months, 8 months, I don't know how long it was actually.
Okay. All right. So the soil that's now been removed, that was remaining on site over the last, since August, there's now been additional soil removed, and that was the clean soil that was intended to fill the hole?
Clean soil and the contaminated soil was removed. Any impacted soil removed during the tank removal.
Okay. All right. And Brian, I know we've had several comments from the public that there was soil running into the drains, so,
From clean soil brought to the site.
okay,
Contaminated soil was covered at all times.
okay. And you oversaw the coverage, and the DEC oversaw the covering of that soil to make sure that it was protected?
Correct. We actually did the soil covering and covering of the pile.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Brian, come on back up for a minute, if you would.
Yeah,
Can you clarify the hours of operation for us, and then the hours of deliveries?
Fueling operations, I believe, are 24 hours. I believe, and we've always stated that we'd limit drive-through operations to 11 p.m. I think we'd like to start them up at 5 a.m., just to beat the morning, catch the morning rush, obviously.
Okay.
I believe we
So
have
the
notation.
convenience store and gas station would run 24 hours, but the drive-through would be 5 a.m. to 11 p.m.? Okay.
Okay, yeah. Back to the soil, because I recall from the last public hearing, the gentleman back there who was up just a little while ago had maintained that the soil that was covered with tarps and plastic, the tarps had blown off, the plastic was off the sides. He maintained, he had pictures of it, and he had pictures of it flowing with the storm water into the storm drains. Now, there's a contradiction here, obviously, somehow. I don't know what it is. We've had testimony to both things.
Okay, noted.
Okay.
I have my case, he has his case.
Fine.
I just thought I'd bring it up.
Well, if this isn't something that this board needs to resolve, but I think what we've heard is that if there's a neighbor that says he has pictures, if he'd like to offer those pictures for our record, we're happy to have them. And we'll continue to listen to the public
Okay.
comment, Bob. I'm not trying to cut anybody off, but
No, I just-
there's nothing that we're going to be
No.
able to do about soil that's no longer on the site
I know, but we
right
seem to
now.
have two distinct,
So,
different presentations on what happened.
understood. Okay, so we covered hours of operation. Brendan, I think you covered the full-size tractor-trailer designation is what we're ensuring with the site circulation here, including the turn out of the back. Deliveries, do you have hours that you would want to limit deliveries to, so that we're not during the peak hours of traffic? And I think we would just want you to limit not during the peak hours as opposed to specific hours when you can.
There's a table over here that we do limit deliveries on peak hour operations.
Okay.
And there will be different size deliveries trucks. Brendan did run an analysis on a full-scale tractor-trailer. There will be different size delivery trucks, bread trucks, chip trucks. Not everything's that
Well, you're
comes on
gonna
a
have gasoline
63-foot
delivered as
tractor-trailer.
well, so,
Right.
and diesel, so, okay. Okay, and then just to reiterate, there's no connection proposed to Archway?
No
At
connection.
this time?
Absolutely not. And if there is ever a connection to be made, there will be an application made by the Archway Plaza, at which time the same process will be
Okay.
initiated, where the public will be noticed via
Okay.
public hearing notice.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and call up our next person on the list.
Hey, good evening. The questions I have regarding the soil removal that was brought up by my neighbor, was there a TRN filed with the DEC?
Yes, there was.
Is there records of those permits and those forms that were submitted? Does the planning board, does the town board have those records? That should be public notice for the neighborhood. Because for the TRN, if you're not familiar with it, the tank removal notice for the tank is also with the contaminated soil as well, whether it was contaminated or not. So that's one environmental question that I have. The other one is, the town board, the planning board is aware of the flooding situation that we have back at Lake City. My question is, with the extra stormwater runoff going from the new planned project into the Gildersleeve Brook, going back into Lake City, that's gonna affect the homeowners back in the Lake Drive, Warren Drive area that we brought up numerous times and has yet to be resolved. With all the overdevelopment that's been going on throughout East Fishkill and abroad, nobody's taken that into consideration through the draft environmental impact statement or the environmental impact statement to the actual neighborhoods. The third and final question, the stormwater drains that go along Route 52, that go in front of Archway Plaza, we know from the neighbors living in the area that stormwater is constantly contaminated with raw sewage going into the Gildersleeve Brook due to either A, Archway Plaza owners pumping out their septic tanks when the levels are too high, or extra stormwater runoff. And there is actually going into Gildersleeve Brook, and my neighbors can actually smell that from during the heavy rain and during certain times of the year.
Okay, that's from Archway or from this applicant's site?
My question is where is the stormwater from this site gonna be routed out? Is that being routed down along Route 52, which would connect into the stormwater drain from Archway, or is it gonna come directly into the back towards Lake City?
Okay, Joe, is that a question that you can answer for us? I know we haven't finished the
Help
stormwater
from
analysis.
Brian, but I think he was connecting into some existing basins and putting it back.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. If you don't mind, we'll have Brian
Okay,
answer that.
let's talk about increases in stormwater. This site is largely impervious right now. With this development, we're actually decreasing impervious. We're providing more green areas, specifically in the front, specifically on the side, in the back, and along this corridor here.
And Brian, where did the car wash discharge?
If you look at the site, there's an existing catch basin here in the back. That goes across the street, and then down to Lake City. So there's a high point that runs basically across the site right here. So anything goes this way, front of the site, goes down, in front of Archway.
So
That's how the
with the new
site works.
plan,
We plan on tying in, basically following the same avenue, so we're not increasing drainage this way or this way. There's gonna be a slight decrease, again, because we're playing the impervious
Yep.
percentage.
right,
So, we're not gonna increase impervious this way or this way, we're gonna split the site in half. We'll be connecting into this drain here, and then this will naturally flow this way, as
I-
it currently does.
Yeah, I thought his question was treating the water and discharging it from the site.
that's
I'm not
what
gonna-
Brian's talking about.
Yeah. No,
True,
I think he's
I'm-
talking stormwater.
I'm not increasing.
No, no, but
What
if
water-
you're gonna
what
pull
water are we
water
treating?
out of the surface and treat it through a carbon filter and then discharge it, you're increasing the water runoff. I think that's what his question was about.
It probably goes in this direction here. I'd have to defer to the environmental guys, because there is an existing catch basin here,
Yeah.
which is in close proximity to the car wash, and there's no outlet in the front of the building. So the clean water would have to be entering this rear drainage system and working its way back.
What type of catch basin?
The catch basin in the ground.
It's just gonna be a stormwater catch basin that's gonna run out.
But it's clean water. It's being treated right now.
Did that answer your question? or-
Yeah, that answered my question. Thank you.
Brian. The documentation with the DEC for the tank removal notice and any of that, is there, I'm sure there is there public notice for that? Is there public records that can be obtained by the public if they choose?
It's a tank removal notification that it gets filled out by the contractor and forwarded to the DEC. It's mandated within 30 days that the DEC receives that notification that tanks are being removed.
Okay.
And that is voidable, and that will be in our tank closure report at the end of the project also,
Okay.
that form.
Not all include the soil removal too as well.
All the soil manifest, correct.
Okay, thank you. The next name on our list? Margaret?
First thing I'd like to say, I think the truth has been really stretched here quite a bit. My question is, one question I have to Mr. Dunn. Mr. Dunn, the pump station there that's supposedly cleaning the
What
water.
we'll do is,
Can I-
let's have you ask your
Okay.
questions of us
I'd
and
like to
then
know
I'll.
if the pump station that was discussed, is it running at this time? And when did it start? Because for probably the last 3 years to 4, it was not being used.
Okay.
Well, prior to the current property owner purchasing the property, there was a former contract that, property owner that was not running a system. The system across the street at Archway Plaza was the remediation system that was on it, an actual potable well, which was approved by DEC in order to run that system. That was the choice of active remediation at that site for many years. The system that was currently on the property itself was not running, that is correct. Since Gasoline Petroleum has taken over the property, removed the tanks, we installed another active system during the removal of the tank process, which will be stay in place during construction and all.
As of this moment, that is running right now?
Absolutely.
It is.
Absolutely.
And where is that water being pumped to at this point?
It's being pumped to the storm drain, which is located in the rear of the
I
property.
believe that's what Mr. Fowler was saying, that water is
Yes,
going
that's-
back towards Lake City.
Right, that is the post-treatment, that's the clean water discharge
Right,
under the state.
but it is
system.
going, okay. And
Yes,
and at what time, when did that pump start working again?
Well, it was turned on at the time the tanks were removed. Again, that's, I can't remember exactly.
I mean, the department wanted that system on, the prior owner wasn't operating, so.
I'm quite aware he didn't operate.
One of the things we needed to do was get that
Okay,
system back.
all right, thank you. I'm glad it's back on, working for a change.
Just real quick, do you know what the rate is, of the treatment, gallons per minute?
You're probably looking at about 30 gallons a minute when it's active. I mean,
Okay.
it's the water table, it's not deep enough, which will be set deeper, the well pumps
Right.
into towards the bedrock. It's really overburdened right now.
Right.
It's not into the bedrock, which will hopefully take place during construction.
What company is maintaining that pump at this time?
American Petroleum.
American Petroleum. What about EcoClean? What are they doing?
EnviroClean?
EnviroClean.
They're maintaining the off-site residential.
Weren't they the prior people that were doing the contracting work at the gas station?
No,
And
that
they
was
were
American
removed?
Petroleum also.
Oh, really? That's funny, because I spoke to a gentleman who works for that company, and said that he was removed, and because it was improperly being handled about that pumping, he was discharged from the site, in other words, that company was. That's not here nor there right now. On your plans, I'd like to see the water line, you said has to go into a certain area. Obviously, you're trying to put it in front of the gas station. Where is the line heading out east? East of the gas station? No, east.
I'm not taking it east?
You're not? I believe you are, sir. I believe you are taking it east.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, I want to understand what you're asking.
I'd like
but
to
I
know
think what's
on the
happening-
plan, for the planning board.
Let me
where-
clarify.
Okay.
What's happening is right now, that water line is on the south side of Route 52. He's bringing it to the north side of Route 52 and along his property and up Lake Drive to the limit of his property. I understand that there may be a need to bring it east on Route 52, but that's not the current proposal.
Well,
And-
what I'm going to tell you is that I have a court judgment by the court in Dutchess County when I sued Mr. Bettini, and it was given, the navigation law was to return my property to the state it was, giving me public water.
Ma'am, I understand that.
So
this
why
applicant is not
Why
Mr.
is the planning
Bettini.
board so worried about the gas station and not the water? Why do I have to wait for a gas station to get their approval before this gentleman can put water into my home?
This gentleman is not responsible to put water into your home. I just want to clarify that. This gentleman is not Mr. Bettini, and he's
Well, then why
not-
is he worried about the water line? Why isn't Mr. Bettini doing this?
Well, we tried, you want me to go into the history of that?
I would, if you can keep it brief,
Yeah.
because
This
it's not
is
really a
really
matter for
voluntarily.
this application.
In fact, you're absolutely right. And we were litigating it with teams as well.
I'm quite
This-
aware of that.
Yeah, so what has happened is, in order to try to get that water line off the property, if you will, part of this proposal was, in essence, to voluntarily agree to say, let's get the water line across 52 to the back of that property, because it might make it easier for the Bikini then to go ahead and do it. That's what the Department of Environmental Conservation is looking at with the Butinis, because the Butinis are conducting either this maintenance of these point of entry treatment systems, or whether you can get a water line. So this is just a voluntary action to get that water line so it's more feasible. This water line does not have to come across the property. So what we had done with the department was, and with the town, was basically offered, look, we'll tell you what, we'll bring the water line over there. But you're absolutely right, the Boutinis have that obligation. If you have a judgment, then your council has to try to get the Boutinis and those entities to do it, because there were different Boutini entities.
Wait a minute, aware of that fact. I do believe, though, this is not maybe just hearsay, I don't have it documented, which I can try to do. I believe when the gas station was sold, there was funds that were given to the new owner by Mr. Bettini, the new owner was to hold these funds to help pay for the water line.
Oh, no.
Oh, no?
I'm sorry, if you had,
I'll look
you
into
had
the
experience
documentation.
with them, so you would
Yes, I
probably know
certainly
that's
have.
not the case.
I certainly have.
Okay, well,
Now,
can I just ask, again, I don't want to have hearsay, but if you have documentation
I
or
will-
something you want to share for our record?
Fine, I will.
That's what we would
The
like.
other question, I have two other just small comments. First of all, when I did go to my court action, there was no spill fund was approved for this spill. There wasn't any spill fund being allocated by New York State for this site, because you can certainly believe that Mr. Bettini's attorneys certainly tried to get it.
They're not entitled to it, well, is it okay, should I give a very quick answer to how the spill fund?
Sure. You don't have to answer. I
Okay,
do know how the spill fund
responsible
works.
party is not entitled to get the spill fund, he's the polluter. The polluter can't get the spill fund money. The spill fund is available to victims,
Great.
if you will.
Mhm.
And so the Boutinis are not the victim. They can't get this money. What the town is doing is saying, we're fed up with how long it's taking. Can we, the town, get some spill fund money for our residents? That's what's going on. It's completely unrelated to this applicant. The reason why the applicant and the Department of Environmental Conservation are working so productively here is because we volunteered to clean up all these bikini properties. So, I mean, I just want everyone to understand how this all came about. The agreement with the Department of Environmental Conservation was, look, if these cleanups are languishing, we'll clean these up, but we're not going to accept all of the routine liabilities associated with off-site issues. The department, in order to try to encourage the cleanup of all these stations, reached an agreement with Bassler, basically saying, thanks for getting these cleanups going, because we've been trying to get them done for the last 10 years.
And I just want to
that's what we're
reiterate
doing.
again, I have a lot of empathy and sympathy for where you are and what you're going through, but this applicant isn't responsible for.
Oh, I know
for
that. I do
the
know
water.
that the navigation was to clearly state that the person who did the damage is responsible for the damage. I am quite aware of that.
Okay.
I am. But I do want to go out to the town, to the planning board, and ask, why is it so important for the water line to just be going in front of their gas station? Why can't it go up closer to Archway Plaza? Why does it need to be right there and wait?
I may have a solution for you. We looked at this briefly. I think best option for you is, because you're this bigger parcel here, right, next to Archway?
Yes.
If we could, not we, but if you could try to negotiate, if they ever form this district, to bring water back in here, to get an easement through the back of Archway Plaza to your property. We looked at
I'm
it.
afraid Mr. Bettini and his associates will be getting me that, because I will be planning to
Okay,
get another
but
lawsuit.
again, that can't be part of this
Thank you for
application.
Thank you.
Okay?
Okay, I have one other point of information. There was discrepancy about 2 stories about contamination, non-contamination. And my water is tested supposedly every month when they show up. Recently, my MTBE level is at 19, which is completely unpalatable water. I now have benzene in my water that I didn't have before. I do have documentation of it. It didn't come from my house, and I do believe there was definitely contamination caused, not intentionally by anyone, but because the tanks were moved, the soil was left there, the hole is there, there is contamination there. It has seeped in more into my well. I have documentation because they come and take my water test. It's not my water test. It's Bettini who's paying for it. I now have benzene in my water.
Can I ask what the levels were before
My
and they are
benzene
now?
level was 4.
4 parts per billion?
4 parts per billion.
It was below 1 before, wasn't it?
Excuse me? Before I had none.
None.
I didn't have any. I didn't have any. Now I have benzene. I wanted to bring you a sample of my water so you could smell it. And if any of you want to come to my home and smell the water that's coming out of my tap, please do. I have carbon tanks that, yes, they're paid for by Bettini, for anybody. I don't know who they're paid for by. They're there. I have 4 carbon tanks. I had 4. Now they've downsized me to 2, supposedly going to do the same thing. I have ultraviolet lights. I can't drink my water. I have my grandchildren there. My daughter is there, visits me. My husband and I, we don't even give it to our dogs and cats. You can't even, you can come into my kitchen and it smells like you're in a gas station. Not so much between a gas station and a sewer plant. It's in between. Given whatever day you turn the tap on. I can't express any more than tell you how important it is for this water line to go through for us. There's homes in Lake City that have never even been tested. They don't know what they're drinking. And I just beg you to put the water line in. Why do we have to wait 2 years for the gas station? I know he wants his gas station. The gas station,
Ma'am,
yeah, it's got
again,
problems, but.
I sympathize with the issue, but this is not something that's of responsibility for this applicant.
Well, whose
So what
responsibility
you're
is
hearing,
it?
but what you're hearing, excuse me, what you're hearing tonight is that the town is working very hard to get additional funds to be able to complete this. I think you know that there's someone else who's responsible for this because you're telling us you have litigation and you have judgments and things like that. Again, I'm very sympathetic to your situation, but it's not something that this applicant is responsible for.
Well, this applicant.
What this applicant, excuse me,
put
what this,
benzene in my
excuse me,
water.
ma'am.
Excuse me?
That's not
Excuse me,
something.
This applicant.
Well, I didn't have benzene until they started digging out there.
Okay.
And that's I have documentation from my water test. I have benzene in there now. I didn't have it before. So that is this applicant.
And again, that's not something that would be documented in the way that you're describing. If there is a plume that is moving of contamination, then there would be ways to be able to document that. But that's not a matter for discussion tonight, and that's not a matter for this board. What I want to say to you is what you're hearing is that this applicant has come forward and is willing to help move this along and is bringing the water pipe across the street and is working with the town. They're cleaning up a site that was contributing additional contamination. I'm very sorry to hear that your issue is increasing, that is not good news.
It is
and I
increasing.
know that that's a very traumatic thing. But again, that's not something that this applicant is required to address.
Can I ask one other question? You have a hole there. You have a hole.
Being
If I had a
monitored by the
hole like
Department
that-
of Environmental
If I
Conservation.
had a hole like that in my front yard, the building department would be out there giving me a summons for it.
This is something being monitored by the Department of Environmental
Don't give me how much
Conservation.
listen, you don't know, you tell me about monitoring and everything else. I've been to the DEC, I've been to the DOT. I have sewage running in front of my house going into a catch basin almost every day, and nobody gives one darn. And I've called the Board of Health, I've called the DEC, and the DEC tells me it's the Board of Health, and this one tells me this and that. Pass the buck. And that's exactly what your planning board is doing. I don't mean to take it out personally.
What I'm saying to you is
tired
that
of
it's
this.
not our purview.
Well, the only thing I can suggest is I do have an attorney, I will be doing lawsuits again, and I'm gonna tell everybody in Lake City to go to the tax
Ma'am.
grievance day and take your
Ma'am.
25% that you're entitled to.
Ma'am.
Can I ask a simple question?
Sure.
Now, the applicant is trying to remediate the site. When the tanks were dug up, benzene is not water soluble, if I'm correct? It moves with the front, but it's not water soluble. MTB is. Is it possible that opening up the holes collected water and drove the benzene from?
You pump and treat to control the offsite migration. There could be, there could be a much more simple explanation, is especially with the MTBE that.
Well, I'm curious about the
There's
benzene.
breakthrough going on through the carbon. The carbon's not being maintained. And to the extent that you have if you have an MTBE hit in her water, and she's with all due respect.
No, I'm looking for an explanation. I'm not.
You have repetitious treatment on these carbon systems. I do not know what the Boutinis are doing on these carbon systems, but the department, either the Department of Health or the Department of Environmental Conservation, always makes one carbon canister, then a second polishing carbon canister. If there is breakthrough in any one of those, they are not being maintained. That's not a groundwater
So it
issue
could be
associated with pumping and treating. That's poor carbon maintenance.
Oh, okay,
I just
all
don't
right,
know
we're gonna,
anything
sir,
about what the
Okay.
Boutinis are doing.
with respect, no, we need to stop this part of the conversation, because again, it's not part of this applicant's responsibility. I appreciate you trying to explain, again, I'm sympathetic to the situation you're facing, but that, it's not part of this application. Can we go?
I'm done, thank you. I was curious if it could be a breakdown in the treatment system rather than.
Influence in that groundwater, and we know we have offsite groundwater.
Okay, folks,
Thank you.
again,
Thanks, Bob.
thank you, but we're done with that.
That's exactly the point. You have a groundwater
Sir,
problem offsite.
sir, Mr. Shaw, please.
My name is Linda Fowler. I'd like to thank Robert for clarifying some of the questions that are going through here to clarify to the board, to the people around us. I work for Wappinger Central. The bus is coming out of John Jay at certain hours of the day with the work programs in and out of the school. The congestion alone, trying to make that turn with a Bluebird into Lake City. And if this gas station is going to create all of these, the kids from John Jay coming out, going in to get the coffee in and out of there, it's going to create a larger congestion than that already is. And so I really would appreciate the board really looking into this larger facility for Dunkin' Donuts, the gas stations, and the whole 9 yards of the whole issue here, because the congestion overflow is going to be phenomenal. To the people trying to get out during the day, I have a 2-hour work off time, coming out of there, watching the kids come out of John Jay, watching the kids cross the street like Mr. Smith said, walking down the side of the road. Listen, we don't want a major accident in there. We've seen car accidents because people don't even look coming out of the gas station now with the congestion. So please take into consideration all of these questions that people have presented in front of this board. And I'm sorry I spoke out of turn before.
That's all right. That's all right. Thank you. Do we have anyone else? Okay. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak for or against the John Jay gas station on Route 52? Okay. Brian, come on back up. We have a few things we need before we see this again. Landscaping and lighting plan. You know, look at the site distance versus the headlights for the drive. So as you're looking at the landscaping, just making sure that you've got as much coverage as you can there without hampering the site distance. We'll ask, Tom should be at our next meeting. We'll have him give an update on what we're working with the New York State Comptroller's Office as far as the spill fund. I know that's not part of this application, but I understand the residents
The first meeting they have, we're
need
going
that
to have the
update.
Focatini representatives.
Okay. You're gonna finish your stormwater?
Yep.
Including the erosion control plan and any phasing that's needed?
Any
So we
phasing,
can
yes.
see what that's gonna look like. Couple of the site circulation issues you mentioned, the parking spots, and then also the fire apparatus.
Work with Brendan on that.
Okay. Is there any, other than the additional comments that the professionals have made, anything else?
I think there's one comment that was answered when they were talking about 30 gallons a minute pumping from the treatment station. That's of no consequence. I don't believe in flooding in the back in Lake City, is it? But we were trying to get a number for that, and it finally came up.
That's insignificant.
Yes, that's what I'm just saying. That was answered.
Okay. And then Brendan and Brian, if you can just look at the site circulation with regard to traffic exiting from the exit closest to 52 and how it may, if there's ways to mitigate any blockage of Lake Street access, Lake access before the light turns green. Covered the soil, hours of operation. Does anybody else have any other notes that I'm missing? Okay.
Nope, I think you hit them all.
How long do you need before you're back?
I just want to ask a question. Can you clarify what the comments about bringing community representatives out? Did I understand that correctly?
No, I think what he's saying is the town is meeting with representatives of Easter 15.
So there was, I want to make it clear that we're not going to merge those two meetings, right? That's a separate, that's not coming in here.
And Lori alluded to it, but there is a meeting, it's going to be scheduled earlier in the future.
Right.
Thank you.
The comments that we've just gone over here, lighting, landscaping, coordination with Brendan, doing a fire access plan, and looking at exit and blockage issues on Lake Drive. I think these are detail-related items that we've just gone through here, and I think working with Brendan, the turnaround time on something like this is not significant.
Okay.
So I'd like to obviously get on the next available.
Okay.
Would there be any chance of closing the public hearing tonight? Or are we going to need additional information? I mean, I think everything that we're talking about here, additional detail-wise, I mean,
Landscaping, lighting.
if Brendan and I can develop either through signage or maybe some slight modification of Lake Drive to either address it or through the traffic analysis queuing summary. Landscaping, lighting, I really don't see these as being.
Stormwater, erosion control, phasing, construction phasing, I mean, these are things we should have in our record before we're done.
But these are all detail-related items. The site, from a phasing standpoint, the site's being closed. We're taking down the buildings, we're remediating. This is not like the Hopewell gas station, where we're gonna continue operations while we're building. That's vastly different in that respect. From a stormwater standpoint, we're actually decreasing impervious. We're gonna have the same drainage flows going from the front to the back, and I think we've demonstrated that from the layout, that there'll be a decrease. We've already set up a pre-post lighting analysis, but hopefully next week with Michelle's office. We've already initiated landscaping with
I understand that, but
Design.
you're talking about things that this board doesn't have in front of us right now. We haven't been able to review it, there hasn't been public comment on any of those things.
Stormwater, I thought it was under the impression that it hadn't even started.
He has details of elevations and routing of pipes. It's more the erosion control part that it hasn't done.
So at least that part's in hand,
I'm just, from a detail standpoint,
For me, I know that you're saying those are minor, but for me, I would rather have the opportunity to look at them and be adjusting them as needed. I don't think we need a significant adjournment from this point, but I do want to see all the final things before, at least from my personal opinion, before I'm comfortable closing the public.
October 1st?
If other board members feel differently, but it gives you a very short window to get all of that done, or you have to re-advertise and we have to reopen.
submission deadline would be, yeah, that'd be yesterday, it was a submission date.
We'll come back to you guys in just a moment. We won't close tonight.
We have to go to the one after. Second meeting of,
October
October
15th.
15th.
Okay. Before we do that, we had two members of the public that had come up before that asked to return to the podium, so
I just have one question. Projecting, and I'm not gonna hold you to it, how long do you think this process is gonna take to get the approval from this gas station? Hypothetically, how long do you think it's gonna take? 2 years?
No, what we're talking about is a final adjournment tonight, because there are some, now that we've settled on a plan and the public has had a chance to see it, we have some additional details of that plan that are needed, like lighting and landscaping plans, soil erosion plans during construction, that sort of thing. So that would be the final visit that this applicant would typically make to the board. The board would typically, during that, unless something else unexpected comes up, we would typically close the public hearing once those things are completed, and then the decision would be typically made at the next meeting. I'm not saying approval, I'm saying decision, but that's the typical process.
Hypothetically, 4 months, we'll give you a wide window. At that time, will the water be able to get put in? Are we looking at another 4 or 6 years down the road here again?
She's talking about build-out
For
time.
clean water?
At the point when the planning board issues an approval, it's up to the applicant to, anything that we condition our approval upon, to complete those conditions, to submit a plan. There's a process to that. Our approvals are good for a certain amount of time, and is this one gonna be 12 months, 6 months, a year? So the approval will be good for a year, and that does not preclude the applicant from coming back and asking for extensions. But again, typically this is an applicant who is, working actively at the site and clearly wants to have this site improved, so I don't anticipate significant extensions.
Then why is our water hinged on this gentleman's gas station?
Ma'am, I can't be clearer in telling you that your water is not hinged on this application. This application and the plans that would be constructed may facilitate your obtaining the water that you need, but this application has nothing to do and is not contingent upon your water. If you have another means of doing this, by all means, you're not restricted from doing anything personally for this.
Fine, I'll be.
Okay.
What does this facility?
I'm sorry, we had another gentleman that asked.
Is the public hearing being closed tonight or
No, the public hearing's being adjourned.
Being adjourned.
And I'm sorry, hold on.
That's all right, he answered my question.
Okay. Ma'am, I don't think you've signed in with us yet. We would need your name for our record. Come on up if you would. Sure, thank you.
I have a question. I haven't lived here long enough. I've lived here my whole life, but I'm not as old as some of the other people who live here. But
We'll try not to hold that against you.
I do have a question from Ms. Fowler reminding me of the bus system and the unloading and all just other people There is also BOCES. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of that thing that the high school does, is where they take them to certain places for nursing, hairstyling, etc. Would that be taken into consideration, because those buses leave at all different times of the day? So would that be taken into consideration with the congestion of the unloading, with the gas, with the oil, things like that?
It's a good question. Typically, and Brendan, you can probably answer this better than me, but I'm going to take a stab and then you can correct me where I go wrong. When we look at traffic, we look at what we call peak hour traffic. So what times of the day is the traffic going to be the worst? So, for instance, if you have buses leaving at, maybe between 7:30 and 8:30 in the morning, that's going to be a really high traffic time. So if those buses are doing that during that hour, then yes, that's contributing to what we consider the peak traffic when we look at the site flow and how cars are moving. If you have buses that are going at a time, maybe like 11:30 in the morning, where traffic is pretty much settled where it's going to during a business day, then no, those typically would not affect our traffic study in terms of the way that we would organize the site.
Yeah, because I know of people who do leave in the buses, and many people who leave school during the times of, around 11 o'clock, even, 9 o'clock, that, have late arrivals or early dismissals, things like that.
So it's not to say that they wouldn't be subject to, if there's a traffic light there, obviously they would have to obey whatever the signal is telling them, but it wouldn't necessarily affect the way we approve this site or the way the traffic would be allocated at the site, because we look at when is the traffic going to be at its quote-unquote worst, in the morning and in the evening.
Yeah, I just want to know that.
Just to add to that, Lori, at this particular site, we did extend the periods of time that we counted traffic, and we did do what we call automatic traffic counters, where we left them out there for a period of time, 7 days actually. So we counted traffic continuously for seven days. We did start earlier because school starts earlier. We did count traffic in the middle of the day, and we actually started counting afternoon traffic earlier because school lets out earlier. So we almost covered the entire day in terms of when we got our traffic data, and then from that we were able to ascertain what Lori said, find our peak times to analyze.
Because I just wanted to know if those times were going to be considered, and when the best times would be to unload. And
what Lori kind of indicated is that we do an analysis, basically a worst case scenario analysis.
Yeah.
So if we can get it to function in the worst case scenario, we anticipate every other part of the day will actually function better.
And what this applicant is saying, as far as, I know we've been talking about tractor trailers and things like that, those types of deliveries, this applicant would be looking to push outside of the typical business hours, because they don't want those.
Do we have any exact times for those hours?
We
Or are
don't,
those
but
still
what the
being-
applicant is doing is they're going to put a note on their plan, and we'll refine that and announce it to everybody at our next meeting. Will give us the hours of operation we discussed tonight, but I don't think we discussed specific delivery hours yet, so that should be something that's available to us for our next meeting.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. All right, last one.
Quick question in terms of if the public.
Just hold on one second.
No, I have one additional question after the young girl spoke. All those numbers from the last meeting were all incorrect when he did that. Did he take the numbers again for the congestion? Because all the numbers that he had taken the last time were too low. And we had spoke to him about it the last meeting, and we had said that all of his numbers were very low about the congestion in the area and what times.
About the
of
current
days.
existing traffic, you mean?
Yeah, that he had
Okay.
taken low numbers, they were very low, and we had asked him if he took the numbers again, did he?
What we, if we go all the way back into the public hearing process, after the first public hearing, we did expand the study and get more traffic counts. The existing traffic counts are very current and very inclusive. I think
They were
what
done
you
during a school year, and they were done
Yeah.
for a 7-day
He
week.
had done when the school year wasn't even in process.
No,
during
that's-
James at one time, so I was
That's
wondering
not
if he
true. No, we
re-upped
have
that.
counts during the school year.
We absolutely have counts when school is in session and during all of those times. I think maybe what you were alluding to from my memory of the meeting is the actual, we had some discussion about the added traffic from the proposed development. And some people from the public indicated that they thought that estimate might have been low because the gas station isn't in full operation now. And that that is true, so the actual existing traffic that's out there is, that's the existing traffic that's out there. We're adding in generated traffic, from the development based on its use, based on the fueling positions, based on the size of the convenience store, based on the size of, the proposed drive-through. So we're adding all that traffic in.
Okay, thank you, Brendan, and I'm sorry.
And I'm sorry, I just wanted to know with regard to the public meeting remaining open, is it going to also remain open for environmental issues? Because I just need to know whether I should come back down on October. I'm from Albany.
No,
Or
we
are
had initially, in a couple of our prior adjournments, we had so many questions about what the remediation plan was, whether you were working with the DEC, how it was in compliance. So we just wanted to hear from the applicant's professionals how that was being managed. I think we heard that tonight. I personally don't see a need to have that again. Are you guys? It sounds like the board is okay.
It's been
But
wonderful
thank
having you, but.
Yeah, no, it's been wonderful visiting. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
One other question for Brendan. The West Campus, do you have traffic studies when that comes back online, and how that impacts the whole area as well?
We don't. It wasn't included as part of this study.
Right.
There was a background traffic added, but not to bring the West Campus into full operation. But that, if and when it does happen, and I'm sure it's going to happen one day, that development would have to deal with what it's proposing.
Thank you. All right, Brian, come on up. Let's, October 15th. That gives you until October 1st to give us your, actually, September 30th for submission, sorry.
7 o'clock.
15 days prior.
7 o'clock.
At 7 o'clock, yes.
7 p.m.
So do I have a motion to adjourn the John Day Gas Station public hearing to October 15th?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. And again, I do thank the members of the public for coming out and sharing with us. I know it probably seems like a contentious process, but we do value your input, so thank you again. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the Lehigh Landscaping amended site plan adjourned public hearing. Do I have a motion to reopen that public hearing?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
I remember that.
I'm catching. It's getting later, so I'm
Yeah.
ready. Corey, watch out, he's
The
making a
crowd
move.
is warmed up for
He's ahead
you.
of Michael now.
They're leaving in droves.
Yeah, exactly.
stereo.
I know. Terrible. At least, I agree, I would agree with you. I like being me. You are so good. Make me curious.
It's a great board.
No.
Yeah.
John Jay gas station can fill a agenda by itself. Fill it evening. Don't need any more.
Sunday morning.
Yeah, nice.
evening.
Tonight we're here to,
We did.
No,
we did.
No, we did.
We did.
oh,
We were waiting for him.
yeah.
No, we did.
Sorry, I missed it.
See, I'm too late, I'm too soon.
Now, John just went up my.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Mark. Go ahead. We did already reopen your public
Okay.
hearing, so you're good to go.
The changes that we made, basically, or they were minor. We addressed the comments that the consultants had made during the last meeting. One of the issues that came up that I did want to talk about tonight is, I know AKRF had asked that we landscape the, I'm not going back
The
to
rail
this.
trail?
Yeah, and what, I'm not trying to be adversarial, but there's so many, we just think that there's a considerable amount of trees. We don't even actually show it. It actually goes wider than this. As you all know, the rail trail has an access ramp on it from 376. A lot of the trees were removed behind the building when this was placed, but it veers off sharply once you pass the building, and there's a considerable amount of growth here. I think one of the comments, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle, but we were to remove some of these trees to plant more trees. I just don't see the need. What we're asking is if we can just put trees that are behind the building that is full visibility from the rail access.
So Mark, where you're putting in the storage bins, are there any foliage or trees that you're removing, or is it scrub brush? What's happening with?
This is all brush down on this side. The trees, the heavier trees, I want to say the more mature growth, which isn't really huge on the mature, it's
All right.
maybe that. That's all back in here. This is all, if you've been back there, it's scrub growth. It's high tall grass, it's some brush. We're not actually, as you remember, we aligned the backs of the bulk storage areas with the building so that we had met the setback that matched the building. But we
And are
really
you
want to keep
surfacing?
that. I'm sorry.
You're surfacing those with something, right?
Yeah, we're putting asphalt below.
The brick that will be visible from the rail trail.
Well, it's
The
actually,
block.
it's a block. It's,
Okay. Are you surfacing that with something, or are you leaving it raw block?
it's, for lack of a better term, mafia block. So it has like, it has,
For those of us that doesn't mean anything to.
Could you enlighten us?
They got an explanation of where that came from. They're 8 feet long, does that help?
8 feet long by about 4 feet high, 4 feet wide, yeah.
By
uh-huh.
2 by 2, huh?
Poured concrete.
Okay, we got it.
They have a rake finish. I don't know if you've ever seen it, it's like
We
rake
can
so
ask
that
for it, yeah.
you can get vegetation to grow through the grooves.
Okay.
And after a little bit of time, these are really gonna be covered with vegetation. The purpose of these is really more for weight. So when you're pushing against them, you can, upload a skid steer or something like that without continually pushing back into the material behind it.
If they keep that in mind, right?
They're not really an aesthetic thing. They're more for, just the weight, to give you something to push against.
Are you saying you won't be able to see them from the rail trail, the backside?
Well, the rail trail, don't forget, this is the rink. The rail trail is way up here.
Right.
So I doubt you will, and plus you're much higher.
But in the winter months, you don't think you'll see it?
I don't think so. And if you do, and you're really walking by that, there's a lot more things you can look at than that. You know what I
But the
mean?
mafia blocks are ugly, I mean, frankly, you know.
Some other projects, we've had them stain them in texture and make them look more like stone or a natural material.
We can. It would look silly, but, I mean, they make them textured, we can do a textured finish. It's not, I mean, they make a ready rock that has a pseudo stone finish.
Right, and they come dyed, and I think that would be fine, like earth tone, you know.
Those things normally don't weather that well. They start looking uglier, whereas if you start with something that looks like cement, it stays looking like cement.
The rail trail goes wider where that is, it goes away from
Right.
that part of the property. Doesn't run along, it runs over, it doesn't do a 90, but it goes over an end.
There's still a portion
portion of it, you can see, I mean, I would encourage you all to go out and look, but I mean, I went out there, and I certainly don't want him to take trees down that would be a natural buffer, but I do think that, I mean, there are portions, particularly right where the building ends and the blocks start, plus there's gonna be heavy equipment back there, there's gonna be noise, and we also did grant, the town did grant a variance allowing them to come closer to the rail trail with an understanding that there was gonna be some landscaping involved.
Closer with the storage, or closer with
With the storage.
With the storage?
Yes.
Okay. So Mark, what's proposed right now, I'm sorry, Michelle.
I think we could take if you agree to this, we could take a wait and see approach. You could wait till they try to install the stuff. You could see how much natural buffer remains, and if it makes sense to install plants. I'm fine with that if you want to do some sort of compromise.
I think I would be fine with that too. I guess what I would say is, Mark, what you have right now for the building, 5 trees and 5 smaller trees, or is it 5 trees and 5 bushes? Is it evergreen?
Well, right now,
Is it
we're showing 5
deciduous?
evergreen trees, and we have 6, let's say, smaller trees in infill.
Okay. Evergreen, or?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know, I didn't do this plan.
Michelle, what's proposed there right now, just to cover the bill, we'll do the storage area next, but what's proposed for the building right now, is that gonna provide adequate screening? Or were you suggesting something different?
I think that it's probably not robust enough to prevent you from, I think the idea is right now you walk on the path and you literally are up against a blue metal wall. And you can actually see the mechanicals, the HVAC system, I guess it's the HVAC system, there's some mechanicals out there. And I just feel like it should be buffered. I know you're not gonna be able to prevent seeing the building in totality, but I think there's a way you can make it feel as if you're a little bit more on the rail trail rather than up against an industrial building or a commercial building.
Let me ask about the elevation change, though. I mean, I just think that if you're gonna try to really make it so the building's not visible.
I don't think you can make it so the building's
Right,
not visible.
right, exactly. Given the
Right.
elevation change, I'd rather see if there's gonna be any landscaping, really at the end of the building, backwards, to make sure that if there's any disturbance in the trees, that, that the new landscaping just keeps that end of it, because really, that is gonna be the part that's unseemly. I mean, the building it's not perfect, but when you're on the rail trail, you're still a ways away from it, and you're looking down on it from.
There were all kinds of trees there, the rail trail,
Right.
all the trees, established
Right.
trees.
Right, and I'm just saying, to preserve those, and any other landscaping
They were
would be
worried about it, I don't
just,
know why they would disturb the trees.
just to fill in the gaps. Yeah, okay, but, so again,
I wanna just, is this your property, though? I mean, this is.
I'm trying to buy it.
But assuming that this plan is approved and you're installing it, this will be your property, so, I sympathize if they did remove trees, but what we have in front of us today is a request to put in the storage, to have, the use of the site change and make some changes to it. So one of the things that we're doing as this process is to make sure that where we can have and ensure additional screening for the rail trail, that's something that will significantly improve, I think, the aesthetics of that spur onto the rail trail there. So that's why we're having the conversation. Regardless of who may have removed trees or planted trees or done something different in the past, what we're looking at is what's gonna be there today, what's there today, and then what will it be tomorrow with the changes that are being proposed at the site. And I'm not thinking we're looking for a huge, extensive landscaping. We're just trying to figure out how do we make sure
Just
that
trying to soften
this is
the
as
appearance of the site
benign
right
as
now.
possible.
It's fairly, I think it's very commercial looking when you're going
We're not
in
gonna
there.
change that it's a blue building.
No.
You're not gonna change that people will see it, but I think if we can have something that kind of breaks the eye from.
Actually, we're gonna
folks.
change the blue building.
Are you gonna change it?
Yes, absolutely, but if I keep waiting a little delay, it'll be too late to paint it this year, so.
I'll make a comment. I used to live off Daly Road, and the area where Lehigh moved in was not a scenic area, even though it was kind of rural looking. It was kind of really run down, and I was very pleased at how much work he did
along Daly Road. I mean, it was like an oasis. So my gut feel, based on years of going by there, is he's gonna do a good job.
But we don't have a landscaping plan that we can enforce or act, there's nothing
I
shown.
understand that, I understand
Well,
that,
I've had a
but
designer working on this for months back and forth, and I'm gonna only add to it, but I can't do anything until I get into it.
But
he did a lot of
Okay.
landscaping
So,
along Daly
so
Road.
let me, Michelle, I think what you're getting at is, maybe what we'll do is say that the landscaping can be approved on site once we see what the storage bins look like. And so we would have a condition of our approval that we would be able, as the planning board, would be able to have somebody go out and just make sure that where there was adequate coverage that's been installed. I mean, is that what
And
you-
the only thing is, the board has to be aware that might not be an enforcement mechanism in that case, and we won't know ahead of time what's
Yeah.
gonna be there.
It
And I
will
have
be,
to believe if you're a landscaping company, you don't want people looking at your site
I
saying,
agree,
wow,
but-
what a
I
terrible
agree, but
job
they're-
with the landscaping they did.
I 100% agree with that, I'm just saying that
Okay.
right now, they have said they didn't wanna remove anything and they didn't wanna add additional trees, and now we're hearing that they may make changes, so I'm just trying to understand the contradiction.
Is it something where we could say, revisit this, say, April of next year, or pick a month next year?
I mean,
Can we do that?
it can't get worse than it is now,
I'm
no matter
inclined
what
to
you.
agree, because
Put some
I
dead
don't think we
bushes
really
out.
know
You
what it's
better.
gonna look like until it's installed, and we don't really know how much is gonna change as far as the coverage goes. But as far as what's around the building now, back to Michelle's point, if there's a way to put a small fence or something around the utility or the air conditioning or whatever, just something that breaks it up a little bit,
Shrubs,
if you can do that.
Small plants, I mean, it's not very tall.
Not saying
so
it needs to be
it's
elaborate,
pretty
but
simple.
just keeping in mind what we're looking for is some screening. We know you can't make it invisible.
Could I
Sure.
ask Alan's landscape person to work with Michelle's
Mm-hmm.
office?
I'm
Come up with
fine
a
with that, if
plan?
that's
Yeah.
okay with you guys.
I mean, if the board's willing, because I
Sure.
can't
Yeah.
speak
Yeah.
to it. And if the board wants, maybe we pick a year, 6 months, if it's, April, beginning of, let's say, the busy time for the rail trail, you may want to visit it.
And I don't think we're looking for anything elaborate, we just wanna make sure that that there's something there that seems adequate, that it's breaking up the site of what,
Would that be prudent, though, to do it that way?
it's fine with me,
That's
if
fine.
that's
Just
all right with you,
that
Michelle.
way you have a timetable.
Yep, I'm fine with that. Any concern on the board?
No, I think John just made an interesting point, though. I mean,
I'll make it then.
yeah, go ahead.
I've done 8,000 miles on the rail trail, so I've been by there many times.
What the hell were you doing?
It doesn't show, but bicycling does that, okay?
Warrant for,
That whole area, on the other side especially, looks horrible, where the plumbing place is, and I almost feel that once he's done, it's gonna just highlight how bad the other side looks.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Here.
Yeah, my office is up there, and we're not doing a whole lot with it either. But, I mean, we
That's the
gotta-
kind of screen, that's a good example, the screen, because, that kind of level of screen is, I think, what we're asking for, at least what I'm asking for.
Well, we put a gable in the back of our building.
It's just
so
to
we wouldn't offend.
preserve what's there, to your point.
I think if you were there in the spring, it's pretty dense. And I think if you said, yeah, we want to fill in these areas, I don't think anybody would have anything to say, but I just think it's easier to do once you're out there.
Right.
One of the other comments that I think Joe brought up, and I want to put it to bed if I can, is this area here about access to the site with emergency vehicles. I think Brendan looked at it and kind of came up with the same conclusion as we're not proposing any changes here. You can only get in here one way. There is absolutely no way to be able to make an emergency vehicle be able to manipulate the site. And I think we proved it the last time. Your best bet
But
is.
you do have 2 driveways now, so even though they may not be able to pull and make a circle in the front of the parking lot, they should be able to pull in and pull back out again.
These are existing. I'm not proposing these. The only one.
I thought you were adding one towards the back.
This guy right here.
Yeah, okay.
But what I'm saying is, if you're gonna fight a fire, you'll fight it here. And these 2 entrances are existing.
Okay.
So what we were trying to say is, we can't get we weren't able to get the emergency vehicles to be able to make the radii that you need to.
Within the parking lot.
I think the way
Not worried
we
about
look
that.
at it, and I did, is that it's not that long of a distance. They're gonna have to back out, and, it's not a highly traveled road. So, I think it's acceptable, especially in the fact that it's an existing condition.
But I mean, they've got plenty of pavement if they need to back up within the site to be
Right.
able to pull forward, out,
Yeah, if there's
forward
if
out.
there's no cars there, but,
Yeah.
if there's cars there and they have to get there, they're gonna pull straight into the site at either entrance, or they can pull in and turn sideways, but to get out, they're gonna more than likely have to back out onto, onto Stratford Court.
Okay.
And I thought
I'm okay.
the fertilizers and the stuff that the fire department was concerned about are all gonna be in the back though.
They're gonna be inside, actually.
They're gonna be inside.
Everything
Okay.
we've
I misunderstood.
supplied an MSDS sheet for is actually, I think the board, the fire advisory board was asking what would be inside.
Okay.
And then Joe echoed the comment, he wanted the MSDS sheets for what we would be storing inside.
Okay.
If there's a fire, nobody's gonna wanna go in that building. Out of your mind.
Mark, I guess just to clarify, as far as the block goes, are you also willing to look at coloring or texturing, or is that, he's already got the blocks in hand and
We can paint them.
stain them?
Stain 'em, actually.
Yeah.
There's an
Stain 'em.
acid stain you can use on that.
Okay.
What color do we want to paint? So I don't-
No.
I think we need to understand if you're painting the building a different color, you'd probably want to pick a coordinating color. I mean, I wouldn't be able to pick one tonight. I don't know what colors are available. I don't think we need to though, Mark. I mean, if you know that,
I mean, I like concrete.
we're talking about, if your landscape person is talking to, the town's landscape consultant, I'm
Okay.
fine with whatever they come up with.
All right, that makes it easy. Other than that, I think, Joe, you had mentioned that you had spoken to Marie Brule concerning the septic. I know that was an outstanding.
Yeah, there were some comments. He actually got back to us with some comments, and I forwarded them to Mark.
She didn't get back to me though.
No. But we conveyed, she actually had more or less positive type statements about the layout. There were just a couple of things to maybe look at with the drywall spacing, but overall, she seemed okay with the short amount of pavement section over some of the septic and about the number of employees and the flow calculations. So all we're looking for on that is for, I don't know, maybe if we can get something more formal than the couple of emails that we did get from her. At least try to get something.
But we're
put in.
comfortable that the septic is sufficient and that they're not going to require
Yes,
extensive.
right. Yeah. At least they're aware of the change of the use and all of that, so they're not gonna come to us later and say, why did the town allow something, and so.
And I think the other issue that came up was the floodplain. I spoke to Scott earlier today.
Your building's not,
Yeah, we're not modifying the structure in any way, but we will file for a floodplain permit. So we will be doing that.
Mark, the only thing I couldn't find, the tiny point, is moving the mailboxes.
Oh, I think.
There's some comment about that, and you're right, it is kind of like, boom, right there.
The intent is, apparently the post office has never made an issue about the mailboxes being here, and everybody's just used to coming up here getting their mail. But there is no reason why they can't all have their own mailboxes. So it's Alan's intent to remove those and tell everybody to get their own mailboxes.
It's almost like they went out to block the line of sight. It's truly amazing.
so do you talk to the post office? I mean, I don't think that's a matter for this site
No,
plan,
it's
but
not.
do you
Yeah.
talk to the post office to do that, or?
Well, I don't think you have to. I think basically, we just got to tell the people, they get a mailbox off.
No, I don't think so.
I think you gotta tell the post office.
Post office, yeah.
Really? They
Yeah.
won't go looking for a
Otherwise,
mailbox?
they won't
They
deliver.
won't deliver.
Again, not part of this.
Yeah, we do.
Having gone from a multi-mailbox to a single mailbox in a neighborhood,
Yeah.
usually the post office has to be the one to notify you that you have
We're
to
gonna
do
put
that.
post it up.
Okay. All right, your bin structures, will they be, I know that you, the way you're installing them, I know we're talking about staining them and all that, but the structures themselves, the dividers in them will be movable, but the main structure behind it will not be movable?
Well, these will actually be stacked stone, so
Okay.
you're gonna have stone stacked, 2 or 3 feet high, 4 feet, 4 feet possibly. And then the structures between them are gonna be stone as well, same thing. So they'll move, but generally.
But all the same stone?
Yeah, it'll be all the same.
What I'm
material.
getting at is that none of this is actually a permanent structure. It's not, you're not sinking footings, you're not
No, no, no.
installing anything, they're just gonna sit on top of the,
Correct. They'll sit on it and
okay,
they'll slide as necessary.
okay. So aside from landscaping, I guess, Brendan, is there anything else for traffic?
Nope. I think everybody's satisfied.
Michelle, anything from AKRF? And Joe, anything from Morris? Okay.
No?
Scott or John?
Nope.
So, do we have anyone here from the public to speak for or against the Lehigh Landscaping amended site plan? Come on up, we'll have you sign in. You can come right up to the podium, that's fine.
Good evening. My name is Kieran Lawler. I'm very proud to be the New York State Assemblyman for this area in Southern and Eastern Dutchess. I'm not in the habit of attending planning board meetings on behalf of constituents, but this is, I think, a unique case. I know Alan Lehigh for a number of years. He is exactly what we want in a citizen in the traditional sense and also as a corporate citizen. He has, a truly and quintessentially local business here in the area, built from scratch, employs dozens of our friends and neighbors here. So that's an important part of this. When I'm not doing my assembly duties, I'm a father of 4 little kids, 7, 5, 4, and 2, and sort of an unofficial stakeholder in the rail trail. My 2 little girls learned to ride their bike right there on the, we park at the Lake Walton parking lot there, so we taught them how to ride their bikes there. So I am concerned about the aesthetics of that spot. Also, took a drive by there today, took a walk by there today. I kind of applied the plan to the site, and I'm confident that we can balance those interests of supporting a good local business and preserving what makes the rail trail great. And I think the wonderful thing about this is there's sort of a self-regulating factor here. Lehigh Landscaping is in the business of aesthetics, right? He can advertise, he can give out business cards, but there's nothing better than your site being immaculate and being easy on the eye. So he has a built-in incentive and motivation to keep that area very nice, probably nicer than if any other industry was occupying that spot. So I couldn't support this plan more than I do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, did you want to come up? We just have to have you sign in on our clipboard so we can capture your name for a minute.
Hi, my name is Joan, and I just wanted to say I think it would be a great thing if Lehigh comes in. One, because it will be building more business for our county, bringing more revenue, more jobs. And I think it's a positive thing. I mean, to try to, for little things, like the building's been there since 1990, the blue building that everybody talks about. They brought the rail trail in. I like the rail trail. I do walk it sometimes. Do I look at specific things as I walk? No, I'm on the trail because I want to walk, I want to exercise, I want to bring my kids out there or do whatever. Yeah, it would be great to walk by and see a landscaping business, nice things, but it does bring a lot into our, into our county.
Great.
So I just want to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. All right, so Michelle, we're fine with having a review of the landscaping plan. We can condition for that.
Sure, I mean, all I wanna see is the site softened with landscaping. I guess I'm confused as to why, because it sounds like they're gonna do landscaping anyway, so I'm just trying to understand why it's not on the plan.
So I
Do it, I mean, it
I hear
doesn't
you. I'm
matter to
hearing
me
the
one
same-
way or the other, I just
I'm
usually it's
hearing
a
the same
cleaner
thing.
process that way.
But I think one of the ways we overcome that is if we, and Mark, maybe back to your suggestion, if we say that we look at this either in 6 months or in a year, and we see what's been done out there, make sure it's adequate, then we update the landscaping portion of this plan with that change. If we
As long as
condition for
there's a
that in our
mechanism by which we
approval.
can do that, I think I'm fine with it.
John, is there a way that we can?
The only way you do it is by some kind of bond, some kind of escrow.
But as far as finalizing that aspect of the plan after the plan's approval.
It can be done,
is
but I
that-
think post-approval, and some sort of approval,
Right.
to encourage them or force them to do what they're supposed to do, it has to take some kind of bond or some kind of escrow.
Okay. I can't imagine it would be significant. I mean, it seems like
No.
that's a very
Yeah.
small area. I don't know that.
Could we do something as simple as saying you're gonna put 30 evergreens in there at positions to be determined later on in the spring?
But I think the point is that the applicant isn't sure what they're gonna install there, and we don't know yet what it's really gonna look like once we see it at the different times of the season. So I'm fine with.
Okay, I was just thinking that would be,
And I think Mr. Waller made a very good point. The gentleman's business is not gonna do a slob job on this thing, right?
I don't think anyone thinks he's gonna do so. I
Right.
think
No,
it's
we
just,
just-
it's
we
just
just
a
have
matter
a
of,
site
So what
plan
is it
and
it's
though
just a
that-
process.
So talk to me about what is it that we're gonna,
Well, just what
wants
we
to see the
typically
plan.
require
Just
any
see the-
No,
applicant to do.
let me clarify. We're gonna have a site plan in the plan, in the building department that needs
Right.
to match the site.
Right.
right?
That's simple.
But,
So we have an applicant saying,
We-
I'm gonna install landscaping.
right. But-
Okay, then that won't match our plan if
But-
it's not that. And I don't think that the applicant wants to install just that and nothing
I
else,
think,
so.
Right.
to
Right.
clarify,
That's all we're
we can
saying.
work it out
Yeah.
before you sign
Right.
the plan.
I'm
Is
fine with
That's
that.
what I was trying to get to.
We just want a plan that matches what you're
That's all
installing.
we want, just.
Yeah, no, but I would like you to work with it.
That- oh, that's fine.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Okay.
That's fine.
And then you guys sign it
Okay, yeah.
once they agree.
It's just.
Yeah, nothing, we're not looking to do it, hey, let's do it after we get approval.
No.
We're thinking we'd like to get these
Yeah.
two together, work out this,
Well,
then
but
can
you
sign
mentioned
that.
something about April, so to me,
No,
that would
no,
have
but
been
you had
after.
said you wanted to come back to see if, you know.
What it might
my-
need in the springtime
Yeah,
versus the
back in
fall.
here is what I'm saying, I don't wanna do anything
Right.
back here.
So I'm fine leaving the landscaping portion of this plan open, post-approval, and let you guys sort it out.
Figure it out.
But do you want us to work out the other stuff, I mean, minus this, before you sign?
I think at minimum, you need the screening for the building worked out.
Okay, so we'll do this and this.
Oh, but whether or not you do or need to do anything where the
Okay.
block is, I think we have to wait and see. I don't
Okay.
know. Yes, ma'am?
I have a quick question. So, just asking it, so all of this landscaping part of the sale of this property is what's holding up the actual sale of the property?
No.
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 I just.
No.
No, it's just a matter, it's just typically when you have a site plan, you look at certain things. And landscaping is just one of the many things that you look at. It's one of the things that's typically done last, because sometimes there's things that get moved on a site plan. In this particular case, you have a building that's there. But we're just asking, because right now the building is deficient, in my opinion, in landscaping, especially because of the fact that the rail trail is there. And I'm assuming, because I've heard so many nice things about his other site from more than the people on the board tonight, that he will do a nice job. It's just that we have to have something to enforce ultimately, and a process by which things have to go through. So it has to be on a plan, the landscaping. It's typically shown on a plan.
So how long does that usually take before you say, okay, we approve this plan and we can go forward with buying a copy of it? Does
Well,
that-
we've asked for it a number of times, and so once they provide the landscaping, it can take a day to look at it.
You can approve a site plan and have a condition that an applicant has to come back within a certain period of time, 3, 4, 6 months, and to revisit the landscape issue itself.
The issue that I
You
was
can put that,
concerned about.
you can put that in a
with those-
landscape plan, and you have an approval, and say, but the applicant will revisit in this case,
Right.
landscaping in 3, 6, 9
Fine with
months.
that.
And
I'm
then-
sorry.
And then there'll be an obligation for the applicant to come back,
Right.
or it'd be a
That's fine.
violation, or it'd be a violation of site plan.
There's a lot of established trees besides the brush that's right along the property line or in that vicinity that the trees, we were thinking some of them would stay. They all have feeder roots, they all go out past the canopy on the trees that have value.
Okay. I think, I don't want you to misunderstand, I think we're fine with whatever we determine is adequate, as long as you're working with our landscape person here on the town. I don't think there'll be an issue. So Mark, just to be clear, we'll settle whatever's gonna be done behind the building, and then before condition, it can be a condition of approval, but before we sign the plan. And then to John's point, we can just have checkpoints for where the storage blocks are.
Okay, that's fine.
3, 6 months, 9 months, something like that, something that gets us through a spring and a fall or something. Okay. Michelle, is that?
It's fine.
Okay.
Mhm.
Is that, okay. Are there any other things we should discuss before closing the public hearing? Anything else that's needed? There's
Like that to
any
know.
other
Motion to close the
questions?
public hearing.
I have a motion to close the public hearing, I have
Second.
a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We'll just have you coordinate and put down for decision at our next meeting.
Okay. And do we have a resolution at that meeting? The only reason why.
We'll put you on for decision at the next meeting with a resolution.
Okay, with resolution.
Yep.
Thank you. That's the next meeting, correct?
Next meeting.
October 1st.
The next item on our agenda is a discussion item for Cigna and Pettis lot line realignment on Saddle Ridge Road.
Good evening.
Thank you for your patience.
That's quite all right. It's been interesting. It's been a long time since I've been in, it's been a long time since I've been in East
Interesting,
Fishkill.
that's one way we could refer to it.
Well, the last time I was here, you guys had a little small table set right over here. and you
Okay.
sat around
It's
that
been
way.
a while then.
It's been quite a while. My name's Don Miller. I'm representing Barger Miller, and I'm also representing Dr. Cigna and Mr. Pettis, the neighbors on 66 and 68 Saddle Ridge Road.
Okay.
I'm a little out of touch here with what the requirements as far as getting on presentation-wise, but
Well, you're on tonight for discussion, so we don't need you, we put the maps up on the screen for the public hearing, so
Fine.
do we have the maps?
they should all be there.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Wasn't in our packet?
I have a
I don't know, I didn't know.
slew
I thought it was.
of issues here, I guess, it's now
Just
coming
bear
to
with us,
light.
because we should have your, do you have a copy of your plan with you?
Yes, I do.
Okay, you can put it up on the board if you want, and then we can go from
I have one on.
That was it.
there.
Carol, share.
I'm very familiar with this,
Okay,
because I live at 74 Saddle Ridge.
okay.
Oh, you're further
Do you feel the need to recuse, or are you okay?
I do not, I have no financial dealings in this, other than
All right.
liking both parties very much.
Yeah, good.
Great neighbors.
Recuse yourself. There'll be none of that liking people.
You're right.
I guess when Dr. Cigna contacted me and asked me to reinsert, he had installed a stockade fence, taller than usual, and an issue was drawn whether or not was the fence on the line, did it meet the town requirements as being offset from the line or whatever it might be. And a lot of this,
You can go ahead, we'll see.
okay, well, what that comes in is, in doing my survey, there's this rather large 7,200 square foot activity court at the rear, or towards the back end of Mr. Cigna's property. And somewhere along the line, in approximately 2005 is when this was installed. I don't understand the logic why not having your property staked out so that you know where your lines are to begin with. But if you work your way towards the back there, you'll see that the activity court, the dash line right about the 15685 is where the original property line should be.
The current property line, or?
Current property line is. What we're proposing, and to try to lessen the impact on Mr. Pettis' property, we diagonaled the property line, so I'm only 105 feet where it maps down to the back. We jogged it back behind the tennis court, given 6 feet of clearance, so Mr. Cigna's if he has to maintain or do anything, work around the activity court, and then sloped it back to the original rear property corner. It is an even swap as far as square footage goes, 1,560 square feet, trading places between the two neighbors. And I'm understanding there's the court's involved as this, and Mr. Sigler keeps asking me, when can I stake out the line so he can move the fence to put it, and that's, well, until we trade land, I'm not putting pins in the ground. It's not gonna happen.
So now, the fence is the blue line with the X's?
Yeah, that's the chain link fence, it's a black chain link fence.
Okay.
And the little jogged out section there in the front left corner of the activity court, it appeared to be maybe a batting cage. Pitching machine there was there for practice, whatever. But the light poles that are up there, they're probably 10 feet, 15 feet in the air. They're huge.
Okay.
And then in the back left corner, there's a shed, I'm assuming for sports equipment or whatever else in the back. And then across the back of the activities court is probably a 10-foot chain link fence going around the majority of the project itself. And it appears to me that maybe the angle iron that I found on the right-hand side, they kind of looked out there. I was drawn by the tree line, which is, and so they said, he goes, put it out there, and they did.
The part of the chain link fence that's down where it says 345 feet,
Yes.
That looks like it's still encroaching with the new drawing.
Well, yes, it is. Once we stake out the new line, then Dr. Sigler's going to move the fence in.
Okay, so and maybe it says it, but we just need to make sure that there's a notation that that portion of the fence would be moved back onto the property line or within his property.
Right.
So there's an encroachment. Okay. We lost Michelle. I think, is there a setback requirement here that you're not meeting with this?
Yes, according to the ordinance, even a tennis court is supposed to have a 25-foot setback. So we do realize that
Side and back?
once we leave here, when you guys tell me no, we're going to the ZBA.
Okay.
And, but again, if you get back closer to the house where the actual stockade fence was that was in question, it's on his property. I just don't think it's 2 feet from the line, but it's within the bounds of his property, where he installed the new fence, which was the original issue. That was I was contracted to do the survey to begin with.
Okay.
And of course, you said that your next stop would be the ZBA, you're talking about for a variance.
Yes.
And as you know, there's 5 factors on New York State Town Law 267-B for granting a variance in New York. And one of the 5 factors is it being self-created. And obviously, the board would find it self-created since he created the situation. It also says that's not a sole reason for denying a variance, but obviously, that's going to be a tough issue for your client to go to the ZBA. I'm sure you've advised him about that.
Yes. I've explained to him, this is all you're doing. You know, it's not like something
Yeah.
that was.
So the board's going to look at it and say, well, you created it, so why should we give you a variance?
I understand.
So in the event that happens, are you going to redraw these lines so that you have the 25 feet, or?
Well, then I'm gonna I will go back and meet with both homeowners and
Okay.
see if there's some type of an agreement that they can reach. Granted, that they would prefer to lessen the impact imposed upon either lot.
Right.
But again, granted, like I said, with a 6-foot offset from the tennis court, we're still looking at a 19-foot variance.
Okay. And both neighbors are comfortable with this and
As
willing to
as I have it
accept
drawn now,
as
yeah.
drawn?
Yeah.
I've actually spoken to both of them, and they actually, the redrawing the line to get the 25 feet is probably the only unacceptable solution to be done. To really create an odd shaped lot.
How much harder shape can it get?
Well,
And you're down to 105 feet back there.
well, again, if you, you know, the point I would make about this is you are a ways back. You know, I mean, it's not like.
It's at the far end of the lots.
Yeah, it's not like you're like sitting on top of your neighbor.
No, right.
But if you're back there, you're out by yourself. So it's.
On Mr. Pettis' property to the left, the tree line is roughly not far behind his septic system. And then, obviously, the trees have all been cleared beyond the activities court on Mr. Sigler's property.
And I would also make the point that I think that court is at least 7 or 8 years old.
He said it was built in 2005.
And it's, again, they just discovered this situation, so you can tell how much.
It's not something that,
Right.
this as drawn, isn't something that this board could approve without a zoning variance.
Right.
So our next action is to refer you to the zoning board of appeals. As our town attorney is telling you, because this is self-created, you may or may not have
There's no
success at the
guarantees.
ZBA.
Yeah, again,
So-
again, if denied, in say, worst-case scenario, you would say, move the activities court away from, and give the proper setback based upon the original property line. You're taking something that's 40 feet wide and making it 15 feet wide for the most part.
I don't think you can fit it in the size it is now, can you?
No, not to make it fit between the property
No.
lines. It'd have to be smaller no matter
Right.
what you do.
You'd have to skinny it down.
But you meet the setbacks on the far side of the property now, it's just with this one neighbor, not both neighbors.
Right.
Okay, so I'm comfortable making a referral over to the zoning board. Do I have a motion to do that?
So moved.
Second?
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda is MAM Realty Site Plan on Hosner Mountain Road. MAM?
Might be somebody else.
Okay. Oh, Keith, okay.
It could be.
So again?
MAM Realty. It's located at 92 Posner Mountain Road. All I have with me right now is the original file map.
God bless.
Let me do something to hang it
No, it should, we don't think it'll sit flat?
on. I'll just fold it over. Want me to turn it in?
Yeah, that'd be,
Yeah.
Is the document unpaid or are you unpaid, Keith?
Huh?
Is the document unpaid or are you unpaid?
Get out of the website. This is the site here, 92 Hosner Mountain Road. There's an existing building and a barn in the back, right? Barn. Mike Mayuzzo is the owner of MAM Realty and owner of the property. He bought it back in 2003. It's located in the B1 zoning district. He hasn't done anything to the site except clear out some vegetation over the years. He's not really done anything with it. It's a hard rent. It's hard to rent. And so he's really sitting on the building and paying his taxes. And recently he was able to get someone interested in renting this place, and that's why we're here tonight, because he has a tenant right now who utilizes the building, and since it's been vacant for so long, site plan approval will be required for the use of this site. Right now, the site is being used by someone who is primarily an internet retailer. And I know that there was a sign out there that probably brought a lot of attention to people here. And, but the nature of their business is sales of regular everyday items, car seats, clothing, apparel, things like that. They do a lot of things on Craigslist. And so they sell it through that, and people come to the site and pick up their merchandise. Or sometimes they mail packages out to these people. So it's not a business like you would drive by on Route 52 and stop in the deli or something. It's not that type of operation. It is a retail shop, but it functions via internet sales. So there's no need for a large parking lot. She may get 1 or 2 cars a day, plus the one employee that works there during the day.
okay.
We don't plan on doing anything to the site. The site will remain as is. There's an existing macadam area over here where the parking would take place. There's a driveway that also services the house on the other lot. There's an easement for that driveway. There's some fences, and most of the land in the back is grass, right? Correct. It's all grass in the back. So we wanted to explain to the board what's going on here, and what we would need to do to get an approval for the current operation.
Do we know what the prior use was, Keith?
The prior use for the last 10 years has really been nothing. And then prior to his ownership, I am not sure, but back, he bought it in 2003. Prior to that, I think there was a sheet metal company in it.
They did all the ductwork for the gas.
Okay.
Can you tell us about the flea market?
Flea market, that was something that they had thought of. I don't think that is necessarily a must-have, but the tenant would like to potentially, it's not 100% sure, but potentially have a flea market at the site several weekends during the summer. And no details have been farmed out on that right now, but obviously she would like to do it when the off days of the Stone Flea Market, so.
Right.
I'm not sure exactly if that's 10 tents or 15 tents. This is John Zarcone, Mike's attorney.
Okay.
Good evening. How are you? I'm John Zarcone. I'm the applicant's attorney. The tenant there had raised an issue of possibly, and I say possibly, that's why we put it down with there, of possibly putting in a flea market. There was nothing definite, but I wanted to be clear with, the board. I didn't want to lie, and I wanted to put it down and to make sure the board was clear that, there might be a flea market there, okay?
Roughly how many people are we talking?
No, that's just it. There's nothing, she had mentioned it to me when we did the lease, okay? And so when this came up, I wanted to be honest with the board, and I wanted to say, look, it was an idea of hers, okay? Nothing definite though, okay? Has she done it? No. I'm sorry, that's my fault. I'll turn it off. I apologize. But there's nothing definite, and I don't think that she's actually going to do it. But again, I wanted to make the board aware of it. If it were to ever come to fruition after the fact, if the board were ever to approve it, we'd come back to the board, okay, and speak to the board about it, okay? But right now, it's just a concept, that's all, okay? But I didn't want to hide anything from the board, okay? I didn't want to hide that, and I wanted to let Keith know, I wanted to let the board know, and of course, in case of anything with a legal opinion, I know Tom's not here, but I wanted, at least John Claros here for a legal opinion on that too, okay? So at least everybody knows that, okay? So, thank you.
Thank you.
And I apologize about the phone again.
Oh, no worries. Okay, so, retail use has parking requirements. It sounds like you feel the parking requirements will be probably less than what code would require.
I think code requires one for every 250 square feet.
It depends on the type of use,
Right.
exactly, but
I don't think we
typically.
need more than 3 or 4, or 2 or 3. I think the
Okay.
site can accommodate at least a dozen,
Okay.
so.
I have a question, what's the storage? Is it just like a barn in the back, the other?
Yes.
it's just fine.
Is she using that, or is that not in use?
No, it's vacant. I have a couple items of my own personal stuff in there. It's not insulated, there's just some lights in there, some
Okay.
lights.
So it's not being, it's not part of the retail business,
No,
right?
absolutely.
And also as part of the lease, that does not include her leasehold space.
Okay. All right, so how many feet do we have in the building?
I mean, what?
How many square feet are in the building that she's using?
Well, right now, we think that prior to his purchase, that this piece here was added in. So the building's roughly 50 by 100, so we think it's about 5,000.
It said on parcel access, it said it was about 4,400
Right.
square feet.
That piece,
But it looks
prior to
like
his
it
purchase, was
was
closed in here in the back, so that's squared off.
Okay. I think we have the discretion to do parking variances. I don't know that we've had a business that we classify as retail where we're actually saying there isn't going to be retail traffic. So is that, it's limiting, because if we do that, then you're limited in the event that you have a changeover in tenants, you wouldn't have the ability to have parking without
Well,
going back.
that's two ways to look at it. We can go down the road and approve a site plan specific to this one use, and if
Right.
it changes to a more standard retail operation, we would have to come back to you to
Okay.
increase the parking lot or what have you.
That's typically what we do in that situation. We establish the use, give the parking for that use, and there's a different use that's more intensive, then we amend the site plan
I
with.
think we'd rather go down there, because we don't, right now, we don't want to change anything on the
Right.
site. There's no changes. How long is the tenant been there right now?
It's March, it's a one-year lease, so I don't know what's.
So I don't think there's been more than 2 cars, if anyone's ever seen more than 2 cars in that parking lot.
What is, what's the maximum number of cars the parking lot can hold? Do you have any idea?
I think it's at least a dozen.
12.
Yeah, so they have 1 employee there during the day, and they may have 1 or 2 cars come in and pick up merchandise that they've bought off the internet.
Do you have the space to land bank the rest of the spots you would need? if you
Well, we
had-
have 1.8 acres on here, so we could certainly land bank the whole backyard. There's plenty of room back here. It's high and dry, it's all lawn back in here.
What is the parking, is it paved or it's just,
It's paved,
paved?
yeah. Yeah, it's down here in the southwest corner between the building and the,
So the pavement can accommodate 12 cars?
I think so. Once I delineate it out, I think that's my guess right now, but don't hold me to it, please.
Are you planning to do anything with the rear building, or just leave it as is?
No, it's the way it is, maybe storage, you know, but.
Okay.
I think for right now, ma'am, it would, stay as storage. I know that there was never an intent with the, current tenant, as long as you can hear me clear, I apologize.
That's fine.
That, there was never an intent, you know, and there was never a meeting of the mind between my client and the current tenant to, have her occupy, use, or take over that space as part of that lease.
Okay.
It was only for the building, okay? So, for right now, that building currently is sole use, not of the city of Mike.
The owner. How about well and septic? Are we,
There is
this
a well
building's
and
been
septic.
10 years, you said it's been 10 years empty. Has it been tested? Is it operational?
We have not had that discussion, so I'm not sure if we even have to do anything. It's an existing building.
I know this
But
was,
with the change in
let me
use.
put it like this, I'm not trying to, if there's a county code, and I'll even refer to Ms. Cora, if there's a county code that says that we need to test, you know, the well, we will, and or the septic needs to be pumped if there's a septic or whatever, if there's no, you know.
I'm just making sure that there's actually services at the site right now.
Oh, there are
You mentioned
services.
that there was no one there for 10 years, so, I mean,
Well,
No,
there's services there.
There is, but if something needs to be tested,
We
done.
can
Even
look
under a
into that.
county level, we'll do that.
We'll look into that, because this final map was.
well, I mean, you're gonna have to send it to the health department for the change of use, right? So,
It was approved in 1990, so that showed us health department records, and, you know, for the subdivision alone, it had to have a septic area approved for it. Right here, it's calling it a septic area right here,
okay.
and here's the existing well right here. So there's a well and septic approved since 1990.
Okay.
The other survey did show a well near the front of the
Yes,
building,
right here.
and we were just asking for information, show an outline for the septic. This site has had not this particular site, but in the area, there's been reports of other wells having different kinds of contamination, so we were suggesting
We'll
any
provide that
testing.
information. Yeah, the tax.
They tested it to check for the
Okay.
Okay.
As far as the site plan goes, we were hoping that we could submit just the survey and what's there as, and waive some of the topography, trees, things, and just, because we're not planning on changing anything. We'll provide a zoning compliance chart and a parking chart, and just the site will remain as is.
Say 1.8?
Yeah, 1.75, yeah.
Okay.
Can you
you
just
show-
describe what the actual building, like, what it looks like inside? I mean, you're not gonna make any changes to the outside of the building. I'm
We're not
assuming.
changing anything on the outside. We have a sketch of what's on the inside. It's compartmentalized. This is the layout. It's got rooms and storage areas and bathrooms and.
Do we have it? Do you have it? Can you leave a copy of that? Can I get a copy of that?
No.
Send it to me, scan it to me.
Yes, you can. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there's no plan to change anything on the inside or the outside. The building is as is. You
She's
know,
using it as is, it's a fairly benign use without a lot of traffic.
yes.
Is there signage?
There's a sign out
Is
there.
it gonna stay?
The lady had the tenant had a business.
I feel like I'm missing something about the sign. Yes, you are. Okay.
This tenant had had this same business on the other side of Sprout Creek over on 82 in the town of Fishkill.
Okay.
And that place became a little too small for her. And so
Okay.
she moved, picked up her sign and brought it with her to this site.
Okay.
There is a sign there now. Part of it is obscured for reasons because,
Okay. It's fine, just keep going.
Just say
Obscured, that's fine.
adult uses, word.
it's called Sexy 10 Thrift Shop.
Okay.
Sexy 10 has nothing to do with, nothing other than plus-size lingerie
Okay.
type apparel.
Okay.
It's not what you're thinking, everybody.
I wasn't
I
thinking,
wasn't
I
thinking
wasn't thinking anything.
Apparently I lead a very boring life.
Yeah. Other than what's up with that deer?
Tom would just the sexy 10, right, John?
Exactly.
I think.
Okay.
So, if the sign is something that the board is concerned about, the applicant, the owner is willing to have that changed.
Is it on the building, is it separate from the
No,
building?
it's a freestanding sign that they moved from the Fishkill site
And
to
it's a
this.
movable sign, or it's been sunk into the ground, or?
It's got two posts.
Like two posts?
Why did you feel the need to hide it then? What, is there something?
Because I guess there were some complaints
Neighbors
from the
were
neighbors.
complaining to the tenant, so she
About-
just covered up the word sexy. She moved the
Oh,
sign
just-
from another location
Okay.
and just screwed it to the post that was there. And then the neighbors complained because it was sexy, she covered it.
She covered the sexy part, left thrift shop
It's just
unobscured.
to Stop people
Okay.
doing things and.
Thank you.
And it's not that type of business, you know.
It's not
Okay.
people.
I would ask our professionals to refrain from snickering, please. Thank you.
All right. So she's advertising it as a thrift shop. Does she allow foot traffic if they want to come in, or is it only?
I assume so, if someone's driving by and says, what's this, and pulls in. It's
Nobody's coming there specifically for that.
Okay.
It's not like you're going up or down to go to Dick's or something.
If she has a
It's-
client from the other store that knows that they moved here, you
Then
know,
she might have
they
people
may come,
coming.
you know what I mean?
Okay. All right. I think I'm comfortable with the number of parking spots, as long as you can just give us something that shows that you've
Yep.
got
Sure.
a certain number, and that you can land bank the rest, then I think that's fine.
Yeah, I think we just need to have it, whatever the number is on the site plan, so in case there's an issue with parking later, we could say there were 12 spots at this
But
point
we don't want to
in
get in a
time.
situation where if we show land banking, then we're dealing with stormwater issues.
I think
'cause-
we just wanna look at what's existing parking right now and how much that can accommodate, just
Right.
write a number on there so that we know
Okay.
what existed at
That's
this point in
fair
time.
enough. We want to keep
Right,
this.
because the planning board has the discretion to waive a certain amount of parking, but depending how much is needed and how much you can fit, if we have to land bank something, we're gonna have to figure that out.
I mean, the owner's obviously hoping that this tenant stays here for a long time, but, you know, we're concerned that they may not, and we don't want to go through a whole gyration on planning board review level if they pack their bags in 3
No,
months.
in all honesty, and I mean this, to the sound of the board, it's a low impact, I think. It's like, you know, neighbors might have a certain view with certain things, and I can work with signs, you know, with my.
Right.
But I
Okay.
Well, we'll know at the public hearing.
Yeah, no, I understand, but I think it's a low impact, but, you know, I personally think it's a low impact, and, you know, for any other reason, it's always good to have a business that's a low impact, you know, to a piece of property, and not have a high impact to traffic flow, ingress, egress, et cetera. You know,
Well, and I think, but maybe back to that point, I would be concerned with a property of this size and with that amount of parking that we not be advertising a flea market.
No.
So
And
I just
Matt,
want to make sure that your tenant, if they have the right in their lease to do that, please make sure that that's not going to happen without
No,
coming
and
back
Matt,
to the
and
town.
Matt, I respect everything you just said, but I'm just trying to say, if it stays the way it does, the status quo, and it stays as a low-impact business.
Okay.
As long as you keep the sign covered.
Sign's gonna come
I
down.
don't care
You
about
stop it, you stop it. Stop that legal stuff.
Well, it looks like we're gonna come
But
up
I'm
with a new
just saying-
sign.
But I'm saying, if it does stay
Okay.
legal, and even if we work with the sign, whatever, but I'm just saying, it stays as a low-impact business, and it's a local business. You know,
Okay.
it benefits the community, that's all. You know, my client's able to pay and do and whatnot, that's all.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
So Keith, we talked about parking. You'll have to just double check and make sure we have whatever we need for well and septic on the site, the services.
Lori, can I just ask one
Clarify
question?
the
Is there parking up against the building? Is that the way it's kind of configured?
It's, the pavement goes up to the building.
Yeah, like right, so I'm here. But is there parking that, and the only thing I'm just wondering about accessibility. So if this is really paved, I mean, the parking does butt up against the building, or is it out in this area? In both places. So if you delineate the parking, and even you could probably stick a handicap parking sign up along the building.
Can that hurt? All right, I didn't have the survey.
Anything else, Brendan, Michelle, or Joe, that we should address with the plan, or Scott, before we get a full submission? Because this is just in for sketch plan right now, so the next time we see it will be the full.
Yeah, but
design.
again, a lot of the site plan elements are not gonna be shown that are, I just wanna make sure that we all.
You should get the site plan, yeah.
Yeah.
Most of it is shown. Yeah, the sign is shown.
Okay.
I like that. I'm the easy lawyer. Don't worry, guys.
All right.
So Brendan, Michelle, or Joe, if I
Especially when I was on the planning board.
Okay, all right, guys, I'm sorry, let's finish this up. Brendan, Michelle, Joe, is there anything else that we need to say to Keith or have
Yeah,
done
just-
before we bring this back for formal discussion?
So you'll get this, Keith, put the square footage of the building on. Just give us all the details.
I'll give you all the standard
Yes,
zoning
exactly.
issue, all zoning data.
That's what I want. Thank
No
you.
problem. All right, so
Take care of it.
Okay, anything else? Good?
We're good.
Okay.
Good?
Brendan, you're okay?
Yep, I mean,
Okay.
I just think you should delineate the
Alright.
parking and show one handicap spot. just so-
Scott or John, anything else we need to add before we bring this back for formal discussion?
Well, I'm making full application now, right?
Yes,
Okay. Thank you very much for hearing us.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on our agenda is the Stewart's Shop site plan on Fishkill Hook Road.
Hi, I'm Chuck Marshall. I appreciate you guys accommodating me last. I think I'm the only person ever asked to be last. I asked to be last.
Are you
Do
regretting
you
that?
regret asking that now? I just had to
Well,
ask.
I have a distinct pleasure
I was gonna say, if you'd seen,
presenting before the town of Clinton's planning board earlier this evening.
Oh,
if you
okay.
had seen the first one, you probably wouldn't be grateful for it, but,
We're better than that.
thank you.
Can't complain.
If you'd had to
Compared
sit
the,
for
Sexy Pens Rib Shop.
It's where John gets all the stuff.
All right.
Thank you.
Your echo is definitely going.
Oh, come on.
We've done that, you going over there.
I was a little unfamiliar with the process here.
Okay.
I didn't bring boards.
That's okay, because right now what you're in is for a sketch plan
Yeah, and
discussion,
I'll
which
just
is a
pull up
very
the site
informal.
plan and,
That's fine. Oh, I'm sorry, I did, and sir, I'm sorry, we didn't catch your name.
I'm Chuck Marshall, I'm the real estate representative in Stewart.
Okay, thank you.
Chuck, while you're setting up, I mean, having looked through this, the whole historic Wikipedia and the homeowners, have you talked to any of the groups around there yet to get a feel for?
No, we haven't.
And Stewart's is not gonna take the Odell house, it's basically going to be just the right-hand half of the Scanlon property.
That's correct. The Odell House, has a life estate on it, and, that life estate, the dredging, or the life, the term life is still alive. So we can't do that, plus it's zone residential. We, at one point, considered purchasing it with the other two, parcels owned by the Scanlon. I don't know why this one.
That's all right, we're okay to work from what you
Yeah, we're
handed us.
okay, yeah,
It's
we're
just a
fine.
sketch plan, we only
Yeah.
require the overhead when it's a public
What is
hearing.
a public hearing?
So just to go through pretty quickly, we have two existing stores in the town of East Fishkill, one at 82 and Lake Walton Road, one at Fishkill Plains. This location, as you indicated, is the existing Wikipedia General Store. Both parcels are owned by the Scanlon family. Both parcels are zone B1, which we understand allows our use. We started this process with the Scanlons back in February. As with any real estate transaction, what we've come to is that we're at the point in our contract negotiations where we need someone from the town to investigate the ground penetrating radar and soil sampling. So we can't finalize our contract until those aspects are complete, which would then indicate if we do the ground penetrating radar and follow it with soil sampling and find that either A, there's something we can't get over buried there, or B, the soils are such where we can't build, then we don't have to contact any neighbors. We're willing to contact neighbors. I mean, we have a lot of neighbors. I just got done doing a project in Cohoes where we had 500 feet of neighbors. So it's not an aspect, just to address your immediate concern. We're willing to work with neighbors. We've switched to LED lighting, which is downlit. We minimize light escape. We try and be a really good neighbor, but because I haven't gotten to the point of this is definitely gonna happen, this is what it's gonna look like, I haven't done that.
Okay.
Okay.
And just real quick, Chuck?
Yeah.
We've been speaking for the past, a month or more, and they started out that they really just wanted to go out and do the soil sampling. And I advised them that he really needed to come before the planning board and get everybody on the same page as to the limits and scope of that investigation, so that later on, you know, we may not accept that investigation. So that's why, in part, he's here now. I don't think he's ready to move forward with his site plan. As far as his due diligence, if I understand it correctly, you just need to find out whether the site is workable or not.
You know, just basically wanted to present so that Scott can send someone out to investigate the ground penetrating radar and the soil sampling. I just put this together so you kind of see what you're getting. It's not going to be we've kind of grown up past the mansard roof with the brick building, and, you know, we do things that are a little more, they'll blend in with kind of the hamlet feel, stone on the bottom, columns. We have gone to an all ephes building, which is a stucco. So this is just pretty much to get in front of you so that someone can watch someone walk around with a camera.
Okay. A couple of things. Scott, I guess my first question is, I know we've had probably a couple different iterations of applications here. And at one point, I think we had delineated areas that the planning board was recommending be studied as far as either GPR or soil samples because of feedback from the town from those applications. So I'm looking at the very last page of this presentation. Is this, I'm assuming it's the gray shaded area is the proposed area that you want to
That's
study?
correct, and we actually received that map from Mark Day. So when Mark represented the Scanlons on their two different commercial applications before the board.
So, Scott, I guess what I'm saying from the town's perspective, was your feeling that this was sufficient, or should we be studying up closer to the building and?
I don't know honestly where that was left for. I have no, you know, firsthand knowledge of where anything might have been dumped myself, so.
Right, and that was, I think, one of the points of contention for the Scanlons was, again, what proximity even were we talking about for these cars and the refrigerators and?
Cars, construction debris.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's a couple of things that, from our perspective, we, you know, Stewart's as a corporation, we have a above average reputation with the Department of Environmental Conservation. We're self-insured, so we do everything correct and we do it the first time because it ends up being cheaper that way. But that's what's built our reputation. I mean, DEC doesn't, you know, our business requires excavating. You know, whether it's tank placement or foundation, if something's on that site, the likelihood is we're gonna find it.
There was anecdotal evidence from people's testimony that there was a, yes, that there was a dump back there at some point in that vicinity.
That at various times, in various places on the property, that there was debris that was left there from cars or
correct.
construction, et cetera.
Yeah, and I mean, I've met the Scanlons. I think them to be nice people. And obviously, and I know you're not saying anything about them.
No, I'm not. What I'm saying is I want to make sure
We
you
don't
go
know.
out and do this, and then the neighbor comes and says, no, it was actually 20 feet to the left.
Hey,
So
bingo,
that's
thank
my-
you, that's what I'm concerned about, is, you know, and I'll be honest with you, I'm at a loss to advise you on this point. Which would be the path of least resistance is kind of engaging with these people initially and kind of saying, okay, whereabouts should we, what would be a thorough search? Because that was left, in my mind, a little too ambiguous during the last proceedings.
But we do have a record from those proceedings for where the neighbors said they saw things dumped. And some of the photographs would be able, I just don't know, I don't know enough to look at this map and say, yeah, you covered all of the area, or no, it was, you know, you should go all the way to Hook Road, or you should go up towards the building more. I'm not sure. I would want to make sure that you've checked our previous record. And Scott, I don't, maybe Jim, you
Lori,
remember, I don't know.
I think our office was involved at different times in looking at other borings and other investigations. We could go back through our files, or we could turn files over to Stewart's if they want to have it reviewed. And I know this plan was put forward from Mark Day's office, but it wasn't really vetted.
Right,
And
right, that's exactly,
so we would probably have to revisit the old records and see if the area needs to be expanded, or even when you do GPR, it's usually you do combination, more borings, test pits in conjunction with it, so, because those GPRs aren't always that conclusive to really know what's there.
It shows
I'm
a
not
shape,
that
you don't know
Yeah.
what it is.
I'm not that familiar with it. I mean, is it typical that you would blanket the entire property, or that you would only use like a limits type of, because to me, I guess if I was gonna do this, I would wanna say, let me look at the whole thing, but I don't know what the cost is versus the return, I don't.
Yeah, they probably narrowed it down because of that reason and just the time. I think once you get equipment out there, it's usually a daily rate type of thing
Okay.
for it.
Chuck, do you have somebody identified that's gonna do this work for you?
Or that already does.
Yeah, I mean, we've had it scheduled twice. We have postponed it.
Okay.
Because we didn't realize, I mean, typically, they certify their testing, and we didn't realize we had to have a town employee inspect it.
There was some pretty significant concern voiced by townsfolk the last time a version of a site plan came in for this, that there was contamination out there and things like that. I don't want to say not substantiated, not unsubstantiated. I mean, there was no determination made, but there was concern raised. So I think that's why we're probably, since we're a little bit hesitant to say, yeah, just pick that area because.
I guess
concern raised.
the only, from my perspective, not as an owner, I mean, we don't own the property, we're not purchasing the property, because the contingency is, can we build a Stewart store here?
Right.
And that is both a concept from the planning board of, can we build a store, are you guys okay with this location? And a literally, can we build a store? Or are we gonna build something that's gonna sink it to the ground, that's gonna be tilted, and there's gonna be ice cream all over the place? We don't want that. We don't wanna ruin our reputation, we really don't wanna, but, I mean, from my perspective, you guys are called the regulatory land use board for the town. I would think that this area, if this were to be the means of our footprint, I would think that area would suffice, only because, as I said, we're in the excavation business. I mean, if it's on the site, we're gonna find it.
Well, and also, I mean, I'm just thinking that whoever actually does the investigation, if they find something on the border of that area, I will guarantee they're gonna wanna investigate further. They're not gonna say, we found something at the edge, and we're stopping right there, because they're probably gonna say, they're probably gonna go a certain distance off.
But Michelle, I guess what I'm getting at is I know we have a record of somebody, for instance, saying there was a refrigerator dumped here on the site, and somebody had a very definitive place where they thought here was. If that's outside of this gray area significantly.
Well, they may be able to tell, I mean, I'm just thinking through this, I can go back to my office and ask the people in my office that do this regularly. When they do borings, they can probably tell pretty quickly in some of the areas whether or not it's fill or if it's, native material. So
Okay.
that may give us some sense of comfort as to where
What something is native versus has been disturbed.
has clearly been disturbed.
Okay.
So that, and I'm sure the company that, I don't know who you're working with, but they probably, I'm guessing.
So
Yeah, and we have a willingness also to, we need to progress our contract, because we've been, dealing with the Scanlons for approximately 7 months.
Okay.
And, I've spoken with several town officials, about it. What I would ask for is if you would just okay this, so that we can, move forward before it snows.
You understand that this board can okay this, but if something comes up in the public discourse, if this comes back as a site plan application, that somebody says something was put somewhere else, we might ask you to study that area. That's what I'm getting at. Like, we have record. It's not something that's hidden from it. We have record of public comment already for this particular site and areas where people thought that there was things.
What if they actually overlap your site plan doesn't necessarily match up with the area that you're.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get at is that I would only do a site plan that overlaps an area of investigation. I mean, whatever's there now is.
But that's not what the two maps show, though, right? I mean, the map,
No.
this map that.
They don't
outlines the-
coincide, no.
Yeah, the
They don't
map that
coincide at
outlines
all.
the area to be affected with GPR doesn't match the area that would be disturbed by your site plan.
Right, I was gonna say, you might really wanna do it for the disturbance, because I have a slightly different recollection of the hearings, and that is, there were certain people who could say, yeah, the refrigerator was X location from where the corner of the store was, there's a car back there, but then there was the contingent that said, yeah, but there were a lot of bulldozers involved, and where all that stuff wound up, we don't know. You know,
Yeah.
and we weren't watching where it all wound up. So you are quite susceptible to that. I like Brendan's idea of saying, if I give you any advice, if it's still within the cost things, to really look at the area of disturbance.
Well, and that's, I mean, again, if you guys are okay with us doing the area of disturbance for where the proposed site plan is, that's fine with us.
And the only contingency, the only thing I have is what if things get moved around? I mean, I'm just thinking of all the possibilities, like what if somebody says that we realize there's a traffic impact and we have to put a driveway somewhere else, or, you know, whatever there may be.
The location of the driveway that's on the site, oh, sorry.
It's just an example.
All I was gonna say is, I think the area that you've outlined here was certainly, especially along Hook Road, was definitely mentioned by the public in the past. So more to Michelle's point, you know, whether your driveway comes out where it's shown right now or it ends up getting moved, I wouldn't change what you have marked here. I would just, to Brendan's point, probably expand the area that you might study to include your current thought about where you would put driveways and things like that, because of the disturbance.
And what I was trying to say was the driveway location that's on the proposed site plan was approved by DOT for the Scanlon.
I meant on Hook Road, not on 52.
Okay, well, I mean, on Hook Road, that's their existing parking lot, so.
Well, actually,
General store?
No, that's right through the general store.
General store, right?
There-
You're going right to the general store.
there is a contingent in that had the town declare this as a historic district.
Yes.
And
Sorry.
I think what's gonna happen is, clearly you are taking that store down and
Well, the
opening
current
that-
plan is
right?
recommended to do that.
Right. And opening that up, and I think,
Just a sketch.
yes.
I'm just
Yes.
clarifying, because I don't want, you know, it's important to say that.
Do you, yes. You can, but you too can foresee a certain amount of resistance from the folks living in these homes
I could
along
foresee
here.
somebody saying, I wish we could preserve these buildings, and we would decide to move the driveway over so the building could be preserved, if that was something that ended up being a discussion. Maybe there's no reason to do that, maybe the building's not stable, I don't know that, I'm just saying, because of the historic nature of that hamlet and,
I think you'd get more than just resistance from the neighbors.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
just
know,
a comment.
but I don't think that precludes this potential applicant from being able to build what they're
No,
proposing.
not at all.
I think it may just move the driveway.
Correct,
Driveway
preserve the house.
Cause maybe
And
a
beyond
historic
the
building
to
to have
stay
some
there,
other
right.
purpose or
Yeah.
use
Correct.
or something like that. I don't know,
We-
that's not a requirement, it's just something we're talking about.
To think
I think if you didn't, you'd have the world up in arms. Just,
I'm coming back to the GPR itself and the soil borings that you're doing. As long as your soil borings are a little bit outside this gray area, if you find disturbed soil, my strong recommendation to you would be expand the area of the GPR and make sure that your results are in a format that the public would be able to come and inspect easily. And again, I've never seen the results before, whether it's pictures that go in a report or what it looks like, but, or a map where somebody marks stuff. But-
wouldn't it really be new test pits first? I mean, to actually go out there and sort of establish where, like what Michelle said, where areas are.
Because you're not gonna, I mean, you're gonna do a phase, are you gonna do phase one on the site? I mean, you're, my guess is you're to do due diligence, because you're not gonna wanna buy a contaminated site.
We have purchased, sites that were contaminated and remediated them. That is a nature of being in the gas business. Very matter of factly. This is an anomaly in that typically what we do with landowners is we have our own internal geologist, who does phase one spill data, DEC, record checking and stuff like that. The ground penetrating radar and the inspection by a town employee is different from other municipalities. Actually, every other municipality we have stores in. So typically what we would have done is we would have come to terms with the Scanlons and then completed the ground penetrating radar and soil borings.
You would have had a due diligence period, and it would be a contingency for you.
Right, and then because the company that the contractor or vendor, whatever you want to call them, that we would have selected to do the ground penetrating radar would have certified their results with their licensing as professional engineers or whatever certification they have, we would have proceeded from there. However, you guys are different.
I think we just don't want to inspect as much as we want to verify.
Yeah, no,
I think we're
I think the
different.
planning
I
board
think
feel
we want
comfortable
you
that
to
there
be
was a
aware
set
that
of
this has
eyes
been
here.
before us before, where the public has raised significant concerns.
Yeah, this is where it left off.
No, and I understand it, but I think you have the opportunity here to make it better. I mean, if there's stuff that's
Right.
contaminated and
Agreed.
buried,
Absolutely.
And you know what?
you have the
Stewart's-
opportunity.
I'll
Right.
say right up front, Stewart's is a great corporation. I grew up in Schenectady where you guys were getting started, and it is a great corporation. Great.
Yeah, it makes it, I mean, my job is made easier by the fact that we literally, I come in, say what we're gonna do, in deference to other applicants, we don't have lawyers, that work for Stewart's, no offense. Because we say we have one, the purchase contract, is one page. And it's just basically, we're gonna give you X for your land, and we're gonna go through the approval process diligently. So, we're really trying. So the only thing I guess I leave with a little bit of hesitation and a concern is when someone makes reference to the potential for us to, whether we knock down a building or not, that site is really, I mean, the visibility at that site, Stewart's, I don't know if many, I'm assuming some of you have been to them, don't look like the Wikipedia General Store.
We understand that.
And our
We're not
visibility.
suggesting you would use that as your store.
No, I know, but just give me one more second. The visibility off Hook Road would be greatly hindered if we were required to leave it.
Okay.
But they know you're there pretty quick, though.
And I'd
They
go
would know
one
you were
step
there pretty
further
quick.
and say, one of the other things that came out in those last things is bringing that store up to code is gonna cost, I think the estimate was close to $500,000 to bring that thing up to code for any kind of commercial use, if there was any change. So it's, I understand where you're coming from on that.
I didn't mean to start a discussion like that too soon. My only point was that we were discussing the limits of your GPR and soil study, and my suggestion was you have a layout of your plan, and you should test where you think you might disturb the soil, and so you have the gray area hatched where certainly I think we've heard from public input before that there might have been disturbance in these areas, might have been dumping in these areas, benign or not, we don't know. And you haven't included in your study the areas that you're on your current draft sketch plan indicate you will be disturbing those areas. So I don't want you necessarily in a situation where you've studied a piece and now you have to go back and study another piece or something like that because you got to the planning process and suddenly we said, well, what you did is great for that area, but now we want this area too. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, what I would ask is that I am allowed to realign the proposed area of disturbance with the GPR study, and that someone from the town can inspect our investigation.
I think Laura's saying one more step in that, make sure it aligns with your site plan, but also do what has been previously outlined. So really, just if you overlay the two, cover all the area,
Right.
you're done. And I don't think you're really adding that much more area.
And again, to Michelle's point, if you take a soil boring and there's been no disturbance there, I don't see a need to figure out if somebody buried something there if your soil boring says there was no disturbance there. So I'm assuming in the field you might shift to different areas where you find disturbance.
Yeah,
I don't know.
our process was do the ground penetrating radar, because that's broader, and then when anomalies are identified in the
Then do the
soil,
borings.
then do the borings based on where those anomalies are found.
Okay, then what Brendan said is what I meant.
Okay.
I would overlay the two, your limits of disturbance for your plan and what you have here. I don't know if anybody from the board feels differently, but I think that's,
Yes, that would be very
that
prudent.
covers you. Scott, you look hesitant.
No, the only question I was gonna ask, when they do this ground penetrating radar, is it a grid or is it continuous over the whole area? Or do they actually do grids? Can you answer that?
No. But
If it was like a roof, you would do the whole area of the roof.
I
But with this type of work, I don't know if they just do grids for it.
I remember, when this application came in, I went back and asked my hazmat people, and they were it was a tricky question to answer. I know this is what you're struggling with. I can go back and ask them what they would recommend if this was like, for instance, if this was one of our private clients, what would you recommend they do as far as due diligence? And they may say, take a couple of samples, soil samples initially, try to map out where the limits of the disturbance were, and then do the GPR for the rest of it. And it actually, I'm looking at the aerial, and it does look like it's clearly disturbed in some areas, and then other areas look like it wasn't disturbed at all. I mean, but you know, I don't.
But
It
you
may
have to
be
look at several
right. It may be. It may be that easy. May not be. I don't know.
You may be going back 80
Do you
years,
have-
though, from when it was disturbed.
We have historic maps.
Do you have a proposal from the vendor that might
Yeah,
define the
I have
scope
a,
of
right,
the-
and the vendor has a willingness to coordinate with you both on a timing aspect and a breadth of investigation.
Yeah, our letter kind of suggested putting out the work plan for the town to review beforehand and then go from there with the field work.
This looks undisturbed.
I think by doing this, you do, you gain an advantage to be knowledgeable about what's under the ground there, because there is concern from other residents, so I think that that's terrific. And I think I'm comfortable with where we are right now. If you're comfortable that if you overlay the two, we're good, and if there's parts where it's clearly not disturbed, then you have a soil boring that shows it wasn't disturbed and you're good to go, or you have GPR that says it's not.
I worked at the state assembly for 6 years, living in the gray areas.
Okay.
Do you
My
have
thing.
a tentative date for this? Do you have a tentative date?
I mean,
Definitely before it snows.
availability, yeah, I mean, before it snows and
Well, the
availability
reason
of
I asked
staff.
if you could get us a proposal that we could review and
Personally, as the board, and it's, maybe everybody should weigh in, I'm okay if you guys are okay, as long as we think we've covered what's been raised in the past by the townsfolk. I think it's important that we cover it.
And I hope that you understand that's all we're doing here, is trying to make sure that what you do will clear what the group that's gonna come in here is gonna demand.
Right.
so you do it one time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, we're trying to help you.
Oh, no, we're good. I am,
I mean, Scott, I don't wanna say it has to keep coming back here for.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank
Good luck.
you.
Wow.
Pam, did we confirm if we're gonna have an item on our October 1st agenda?
You got a lot of notes there. Run out of ink?
But that's not a confirmation.
I don't think you have any gaps.
Yes. Would you all just excuse us for one moment, because I wanna make sure we don't cancel a meeting if we have something on it. Just bear with me 1 second.
Going to the bank.
Do we have to make a motion to cancel the
We have to,
meeting?
yeah, we have to make
Well,
a
I
motion
think
to
that's
pass
what-
and cancel the
I
meeting,
think
yes.
that's what she's referring to. Is there something on the agenda or isn't
Two
there?
Echo cottages, one for me and one for Mike. You've got all that land that you want.
Yeah.
I want to discuss an idea with you guys. You know, we have a growing board of professionals and consultants. I think we now need a town consultant on anger
On
management.
anger management, I agree
That's
with
what I'm
you.
thinking. We
I'm
need an
thinking
anger
we need
management
anger
specialist
management
to get involved in these hearings.
It'd be nice, but I'm frustrated.
Stragglers that he can't put up.
Oh, Lord.
And you really trust the lawyer who says that?
I'm sure we are until we are
So
officially
no
closed.
bozo no-nos.
Yeah, exactly. We don't want any of that at 2211.
What?
Any more disturbances.
You're not gonna cause another disturbance,
No,
are you?
not at all.
Because I mean, the last time was pretty good. It was bad. You wouldn't have been impediment.
I don't even know what they have in that system.
I mean, you're right, I am.
I
Put you
apologize.
right in the way, I'll put you in front of the way, to be generous.
I'm very sorry about that. Normally I wouldn't do this. We are expecting to have something on our October 1st agenda, but we don't have all of the information we were expecting yet, so. John, if the planning board ends up with an empty agenda, are we able to cancel a meeting via public notice on our website
Sure.
and via email to our board members?
Supposed to take every available means, like you have a snowstorm, snowstorm doesn't give much time to do
Yep.
that.
Okay, all right, then if it's all right with everybody, we'll leave the October 1st meeting in place. In the event, we do expect we might have something on the agenda in the next day or so. If we don't, then we'll circulate by email and post on the website to cancel.
What are we expecting?
Stone Ridge.
Okay.
Okay, all right, so I apologize for stepping out like that. I normally would never do that, but I just, there's time sensitivity and we're trying to be accommodating. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Yes, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.